Hello everyone. For today's video, we'll be going in and modeling a milk crate. So I'm just going to start off splitting my view, turn one of these into an image editor. We'll drag over our first image of a crate, which will be this one. And then I'll split the window and we'll bring in our second image of a crate. I haven't yet opened PureRef for the day, but my second image is actually someone falling off of a crate. Definitely gotta recommend not walking on crates, but this particular crate showed a good image of what's going on with the bottom, which I need to see. And, you know, a lot of these images of crates I was looking at were like crates from the side, so not the most efficient crate images. But really, if you're familiar with my modeling style by now, we are just going to get in here and have some fun with it. Just looking for my second image that I lost somehow. Here we go. Now we have our third image and we are now good to go. So when I was first looking at this shape, I was like, you know, at first I was in awe that people were walking across these things because that's nutty. But secondly, I was like, wow, this area looks so tricky. Like, this is rounded while there's also like a square rail on it, and these things have to click into each other. I mean, we're not going to be modeling all the stressed plastic look, but we are going to make a subdivision version of this particular mesh. So let's just get in and have some fun with it. So this image up here isn't needed yet, but this one is, and we're going to just kind of eyeball it. So we're just going to start off with a plane, and keep in mind that for this particular run I did not give it a practice run, so we are just getting in here and just y'all are seeing kind of my raw thought process, which I find to be interesting for another type of video that we could do, because I mean, like I say, a lot of the stuff I do is thoroughly rehearsed, and so showing, you know, what happens in these unrehearsed situations, you know, has its own worth to it, because you know, it really gives some insight into my thought process. Like right now we're adding this big shape, which is going to be the shape that makes us, I'm going to say that that's at the halfway point. However, I would say that that's a little past the halfway. So let's GY. We can press B and, you know, maybe give it 6 segments just because. GY, really got to question how we place this. And from here, let's go into vert mode, and I'm just going to press K, C in order to constrain cut, jump to the other side. So we know that in between this, there's a midway edge. And all of these edges have to be like the same amount. So really what we should do is simplify what we have here and just set it up to 4. I mean, like I said, I'm just thinking on the fly here. So there's could be a chance that, you know, I'm completely wrong. Let's F that, because dissolving would actually get rid of the point, which we still want. So let's just 1, 2, 3, which will give us 4. Let's press K and we will just bring this right over. Theoretically, this one should meet right here in the middle. So let's actually undo this one that we added and just think about how we want this to go. So G, Control Shift Tab, and let's jump to vertex snapping. I'm going to press G, Z, and let's check our snap settings. We want closest, so G, Z. Maybe we need our active selection. Snap is always so unique whenever it comes to edit mode. Let's press B for box select, but there's always a way. So here I am just trashing snap. Snap's a good boy. But yeah, sometimes in these videos on the fly, I just forget what I'm looking at with those options. But I'm telling you, every time I ever deal with this stuff on a personal level, I get her done. Just like we're about to get this crate done. You know, we got to come in as confident, you know, believe in ourselves. You know, we're going to complete this and we're not going to fail. So I'm going to actually select everything. Shift tilde for boundary loop, which, as you know, I have shift tilde mapped to boundary loop from here because I just love this option. Let's right click, and under mesh tools, which is enabled built into Blender, we're just going to use offset edges and maybe offset it so far, and we'll press P to separate, and let's just bring it out on the Y, select both meshes, and let's just shift click knife while looking at it from this frontal view in order to perform a knife project, we can just hide that. And now we have this as our shape. So we need a portion of this, but a portion of this we don't actually need. So where it basically goes straight, we want to cut that short so we get something like this. I mean, like I said, I'm just thinking out loud. There's always going to be someone who is aware of a much more formidable technique for doing these things. Let's press Alt-X, bisect mod. So now we're split in half. This means that we can begin working in the middle. So if we look at this area, we have 1, 2, 3 sections, not counting our mirroring. And ours also looks a little short, but we can live with that. So I'm going to first highlight points so I know where I'm working, because it looks like this starts from the first point. This type of modeling that I'm using is, just what I've just gotten acquainted with over all the years of modeling, just kind of this jump off checkpoint system of just creating things and then locking in checkpoints and then trying to extrapolate from there. Whether it's a success or failure is always variable. Let's press V during dice to activate the new view dice. And what's great about this is, first of all, it uses a completely different system, but also the .ui works for it. So we can actually specify, hey, we want 3 on this half. And because of our selection, when we click, we actually dice only the side that we need. We don't need that at all. We just need that. And, we're pretty good to go. However, the new dice is still so new that integrating it into my workflow is going to take a moment, but I guarantee you it will, because I requested it and I just had no idea that it was actually going to come so soon. So let's look at this area. This area is some hexy flexy patterns. Let's start off with, actually let's control click on, where is it? Align. So if we control click, we can use it to align to view. And by rolling the wheel, we can actually set our view to this particular angle just by holding control. So align to view isn't talked about a lot, but it's pretty integral. So if we use dice, we can press V in order to dice from view, and we're only dicing this face. And you know me, if you've been following me for a moment, accuracy isn't my strong suit, but let's have fun with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 down. And we're talking about from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We would have been 1 too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the thing about view dice is, first of all, it doesn't work for multiple objects yet, but also we don't have free transform with it. These sort of things will have to come later. But if we click, we have now at least put this pattern in, and we can survive, even though the amount of closeness we've given it is going to become a point of contention either now or later. So the next thing is this edge that's happening here. We want to go ahead and just create this. And I don't even know if the next steps that we're about to do is going to perform right, because like I said, untested. But these are the same kind of tests that I actually give the team, where I'm just like, randomly, let's make sure that this feature is working. And a success is good, of course. Let's also get out of Boxcutter for edit mode. It's important to note that you can be in Boxcutter in both object mode and edit mode. And we don't want to get rid of too many points that we begin sacrificing the integrity of our circular piece. But some of these extra points, they're not going to help us. For this edge, I'm going to do a no-no where I press GG, and we see that that's just not going to play. So we have this really large gap that we could either deal with by trying to GG, just slide in a little bit, really just relax it a little bit and just play it off, pretend like, this was by design. But we do want to keep this point here, and we want to keep this point here in order to maintain their straightness, because once we start sacrificing those aspects of the mesh, then all is lost and we'll end up with a distorted crate. But let's just get in here and just try to keep things as straight as possible. And if we go into object mode, we could Alt V and look at wireframe to just look at it from object mode. And we see that this pattern that's happening in here is something that we should probably deal with as a whole, because mirroring it isn't going to cut it. But we were good. We were trying some things. We're 10 minutes in, no time lost, you know. So really just thinking about how we want to go about doing this, because we're going to have to make this piece, then mirror it 4 times, and then put these wedges in, and then bevel the edges. This is going to become a saga. So I'm just going to bring the shape out, and you know, if we want to do it non-destructively, we could put a displace on it in order to do its move, and then we just lock it somewhere like this. Press Alt X, A to add a new modifier, and let's press A again to make sure that we're adding a new modifier. So now we've added it, and if we wanted to basically mirror it using an empty, we could also press V to just use view, and I'm just going to set up a Y mirror and just rotate it 90 degrees like so. So we have it in like we're looking at now, which basically invalidates the previous mirror. Whenever it comes to mirror, I get a little weird with mirror, because we've added so much flexibility with mirror that you can just add and edit your currently existing mirror modifiers. So now we're currently dealing with this view-based mirror. That means that we can, you know, weld these edges by putting a weld on the stack. But also, because of recent fixes with mirror, whenever we press Alt X and we press X to basically edit the currently existing mirror, the gizmos orient it correctly, which means that I want to keep this side mirroring it to that side, and I don't want to add a new mirror modifier for that. So this is basically what our shape is looking like so far. So the next thing is we could add a bevel. I didn't really think we'd add a bevel like this, but here we are adding a bevel like this. Probably a lot easier than what I was actually thinking initially. And we are going to need the extrusions of this. So let's duplicate this, Shift H, and we are just going to remove every modifier from it and just re-add a mirror. And so the original idea I was thinking was that we could use screw and then go to 4 and do like a extrusion like so, in order to extrude out just what we need, which is just this. And then we could go under modifiers and add a solidify and press something like 4 to get a complex solidify, which gives us a much better result, because solidify recently had the ability to have not only simple but complex, which we see that complex just works a little bit better. But let's say we actually want this to work, because what we're looking at isn't going to work at all. Let's press X and delete only faces and take a look at what we have, and we're kind of getting somewhere, except some areas are just going to be a hard negotiation. For example, we tried to really make this top area work all as one continuous piece. If we press YY and just rip it off, we see that it is just fine. If we press Shift H, it's not fine, but let's press P and separate just this piece. And keep in mind, we're in local mode, just experimenting, just seeing if we can get it right this way, because this was a way I was thinking in my head, and I was just pondering it. You know, I try to always contemplate my next tutorial steps and dialogue topics that are going to come up, and pre-screen to avoid talking about something triggering. But let's go back under solidify, and let's press 2 and push it out evenly from both sides. So we see that we're able to get some leeway with that. That's one option I forgot to try. I was just thinking in my head, and that's just the option that came back to me out of the ether, is pressing 2 and trying to push it, and we see that this area still is a disaster. So if we remove this, we could probably get something a little bit more manageable, but there is such a strange skew happening with this. But really, this is just amazing that Solidify is even able to give us this. So for this reason, that's why the option of 4 exists inside of Solidify. If we look at the help, 1, 2, 3 changes the offset, but 4 changes the solidify mode from manifold to non-manifold geometry when it comes to solidification. So it could definitely be of use. So let's come out of local mode, and we have nothing showing, but you know, this is what we're going to be dealing with after a while, except we're going to need to have it transition fluidly into the edges and also bevel nicely. So let's take this object and our empty, and let's just press Alt X, and we're going to mirror it. But we want to press A because we already have a mirror. We don't want to modify the existing mirror. So now we mirrored it, and then we mirror it again, and now this is an entirely manifold piece. So if we look at this, this is kind of what we're looking at with our Milkcrate demo example. And since this is non-destructive, we can still get in and change our screw amount in order to make it a lot thinner. And then if we press Alt H, we can see a little bit better what we're dealing with. So I'm just going to bring this out. And which mirror is doing this to us? Oh, probably this one at the end. However, we have 3 mirrors happening with this mesh. Let's toggle this one off. That one's important. Okay, so we have 1 mirror doing the same thing. So if we turn this back on, we actually need this to only do it from the x-axis and the y-axis on one modifier. So modifiers can be a little confusing, but the best advice I can give you is just get in there. You know, only experience will learn you. It's like Westworld. You know, on your quest to become a perfect host. Never mind, I was about to make a terrible Westworld joke, but you know, the process of becoming human involves a lot of bad things happening to you in the park. Just put it like that. Let's also turn off mirror for edit mode. And we want to probably turn off clipping, but I'm thinking that this one is the one that's clipping and merging that's causing us issues. And really just kind of thinking on my feet here with what kind of result we're going for, because we're starting to get some of those building blocks in place, but we need to definitely block this out. So I'm going to try something even stranger than what we've been doing so far. First of all, let's give a little bit of extra depth to our crate. We want it to hurt when people fall off of it. Let's select this, QOT. We now have a box. Just Q, operations, and to shape, one of my favorite hotkeys of all time. You know, even the journey of to shape, getting to this point, is a story all on its own. But all I can say is I'm just so proud of what's gone into it. But it turns out we don't need to shape. You know, still thinking of solutions on the fly. You know, my next rationale is, you know, Booleans, like Boolean activity, because, you know, with Booleans, we have definitely showcased adequately that we can basically solve anything. We can solve any mesh you make with a Boolean. Like, meshes are meshes, and there's rules to meshes, and as long as you play inside the range of those rules, you're in for a good time. But, you know, rules are made to be bent and deformed and twisted into other things. So, you know, that's the purpose of me telling you the rules, is so that you can experiment with them and break them and find your own way to get to where you're trying to get to. So for this to really work, we would need to maybe expand this and then cut it short. You know, it's just such a interesting shape, but we definitely are going to need this happening on all of our corners. So if we just take this, Alt X, we can't mirror it that way, but we can Alt X, press V, press X. Let's actually change our pivot point to the 3D cursor for this. And our cursor's also placed. Wait, is our cursor placed there? Let's try it again. We want to change our pivot point to the cursor. And from here, we could just mirror it across. And then finally, without shift, just mirror it across to the other side of that. So we're just going to continue on with this instead of getting caught up in a polygonal conundrum, because, you know, they're the biggest time killers of your work and will cost you dearly every time you get crazy with the mesh. And as I look at this, I'm not seeing this edge on the boundary. I'm just not seeing it. I mean, I see some sub-D things that we're going to be doing that's going to be a hoot, but you know what I don't see is a boundary like we're seeing. I'm seeing something more like that. And if we were to apply it and just bring it over and extend it into this and just make it round and have all of this connect, it would just be a done deal. But let's continue on with this. You know, today we're trying a little bit of hybrid, destructive, non-destructive work. We're also going to save this. So this is a Milkcrate, so Topostudy, Milkcrate, and we're about 20 minutes in, still just blocking in this shape. So, you know, with these videos, I warn you of time efficiencies being present. Definitely, you know, if you're practicing it, you know, check and see how much time you're able to shave off, because I imagine it is astronomical. With practice sessions, it's just short work. We're going to take this mesh and clean it because I don't need all those points I was looking at. And once again, let's just select the face, control click to go to view align. There's a lot of ways to access view align. You could even access it under ST3 tools under align view if you just want a standalone option. But you know, multi-tools is much more efficient for us. So let us click dice, press V to bring up view dice. And the number that we had before was probably going to do the job. I also want to make sure that we're dicing across the middle in the way that we're looking at it. So maybe something like that. And let's try just expanding that out via screw. We use screw, but instead of spinning it, we want to press 3 in order to use the extrude mode of screw. And let's also shift it above the mirror, so that way we're not extruding the mirror result, we're extruding it and then mirroring it. You know, modifier stack, so important. This shape is becoming less important. But now we have this piece, and let us press Q, go under solidify, press 3 in order to do a solidify that's a manifold, but we see that there's geometry we have to remove. So that's no problem. We're just going to select our way across things, maybe all the way around things. I'm feeling frisky, I'm feeling like a cat. Let's press X and delete edges, and this is what we're looking at so far. So let us go back into solidify, and we see that a one-way push isn't going to work, but if we press 2, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 to go back to this, we're able to get something a little bit more acceptable. However, things are definitely looking off with our crate, so somewhere along the way we went the wrong path. So let's press X and delete only faces just to see what we end up with inside. And we're currently looking at something like this. So all of this is looking good. However, it starts getting a little beefy and excessive. So is that the solidify doing it? We have the extrusion phase just bringing it out, doing its best. And we could even break this into planes and then rejoin it, but sometimes I just gotta know if I can get it to work. You know, I'll go in and start tweaking options, but I mean, really, what can you do? Let's change this to 0. And we're just really looking at this hard because what we do is what we're going to be committing to. So we don't want anything wacky happening because, you know, subdivision modification is just so hard. But we're pretty much almost near the end of this endeavor. We can start looking at some of our secondary images. Let's press Alt-H and just bring back what we took out. And this is here just for the purposes of beveling. So let's press Q and clean the mesh, which means that this mesh is now nothing. But let's also just grab this and just bring it down to the lowest level so we get something like that. And then we also have it covering up this area too. So let's actually go back a bunch of steps. I put my cart before the horse, which is what the person in the song I'm listening to is actually singing about. And let's just delete this face in the middle. We'll leave everything else except for this middle area. Yeah, I can tell this one's going to be a photo finish, but that's the fun. Like sometimes I got to challenge myself by just doing these on the fly takes, because I'm just looking at the clock and thinking, man, I got to get this together before these guys start calling me out for being a Riri. But let's save our crate, and I'm going to Control Shift S, and we're just going to add a _1 on the end, because that means that now from here we can just jump up to the next phase. All right, so continuing on. So from here, we need to now begin working with no fear. So I'm going to just begin expanding areas out in hopes that there's just a fluid connection here because of all of our mirrors bisecting and merging with each other. And then from there, we'll come back and we'll add our corner section in. But there's no need for us to sacrifice what we have going on for what we're going for. So I'm sorry, terrible explanation, but just no more of that. So let's also delete that. and just really got to analyze this because we're about to begin applying. So this is where we get to the nitty-gritty of things. And even after a longer pause, I see that there's a line happening in the middle that must be gone. And I'm not sure what is causing that, but we are going to find it and we are going to eliminate it because, you know, like I said, if we apply this, totally regrettable. If we apply the wrong stuff, we have to deal with it all the way around. So applying it's a review process. You know, you gotta just not apply. You gotta sit there and really just think about what you're about to be doing, because, you know, it only gets more serious from here. And so going back and making back changes is just not going to be in the cards. So even seeing that being missing, you know, we got 2 loops there, we got them on the other side, you know. So I'm just pausing the video and just giving this an analysis view just while I'm interacting with everyone. For this piece, we are extruding it via screw, so that we can't just get the offset just absolutely right, but once we begin applying things, we can begin talking about that. But for now, holding shift isn't going to get in there and let us deal with that like we want to. So this area is also very important because we need it to bevel, but it's not going to bevel if it's not meeting on its boundary. So let us collapse all of the modifiers, and I'm going to enable showing every modifier in edit mode. And let's actually see the real mesh in edit mode in a modified state. So let's move this over, and we see that the moment you hit pay dirt, it just looks so different. Just kidding, but it totally does. And we don't even need that piece there because we already made the actual piece, and all we're adding is just a round section that's happening on the inside of our crate. So from here, the next thing is for us to add the bottom, and then from there we can begin talking about the applying process. So looking at it, just really just perusing the form, and, you know, would you walk across this? 10 out of 10, I would walk across this crate. But, you know, what's terrible is on the inside, everything is filled, like very solid. So we could select this piece and also add a solidification on it to just bring it inside. And that is almost accurately kind of what we're dealing with this particular crate. When it comes to these pieces down below, I also see that they are possibly filled too, but their little triangles look a little cuter than my triangle. So I don't know, I feel like I'm probably missing a lip that's happening around that. We could probably just add a border just because. So let us go back into the viewport. Like I said, victory laps are for other people, not us. I will never be emerging victorious because, you know, modeling is just one of those things you get better at. I don't know if there's a best modeler. I mean, I don't know, maybe Tally, but I assume that everyone is still just learning something every day, because I sure am. Let's press I, and we'll press B in order to preserve the boundary of our mirror. And let's press X and delete that face. And that's what we did. And this is what we got. So just a little lip. I'm actually going to go back in, and right before that phase, we're just going to press I, give it a slightly bigger lip, press X and delete faces, get down and question this area. You know, what you doing, Mesh? And it's crazy because we're dealing with a very heavily modified version, so the sliding is crazier than usual. It's not as smooth as I'm indicating, but maybe something like that, just a little lip. However, you know, I feel like I'm really extrapolating and I'm seeing details that aren't there, which is sometimes the thing, you know, Inuwaska guys. So let's press QOT, and this time I want a plane. And this time instead of deleting it, we're going to keep it on the bottom. And let's just look at what our crate is. So to me, I see this crate as, all right, let's press I, B. All right, it was the boundary that was getting me. Tell you, sometimes it'll get you. And we'll just extrude that down, and let's just bring this down, and I'm going to give it the tiniest bit of depth, and then we can actually bring this back up to fit this area. So that's how close this normally works to my brain logically. I'm gonna have to read the documentation and make sure that something crazy didn't happen to it, but I could have sworn. So let's bring up this image that actually shows us the bottom. And it looks like we actually get it easy on the bottom with this crate. All we have to do is just do kind of a linear dice. Sort of. Geez, what shape is that? What shape is that? I can only say it again. So I'm going to press I, and then I'll press E, and we'll scale it in. And I'm pretty sure we're going to need to now talk about rounding this, because we're going to need to round it out to something like 0.177. Just looking at what number I was nearest at just now when I was looking at it, because we can get all of it to basically be congruent with that. In fact, if we had clearance for hypercursor, you know, we'd really be dealing with that in a very creative way. But it's not at showtime yet, but I am excited about it. Let's press V. You know, behind the scenes, I'm just trying to push people to release stuff. I'm like, come on, you gotta release it so that way it can be part of my modeling lexicon. But I can't introduce it until you introduce it. So maybe we should find a better reference of this bottom before we go bottoms up on this bottom. But you know, what I was going to do was perform a dice like that, and then maybe split this whole section off. You know, we could just grab this entire, let's just use face select, and we'll just grow it. Press YY to rip, and press P to separate. You know, we didn't even have to rip it to double Y it, but let us just press Q and we go to screw, change it to 3 in order to go to extrude mode. So now we're basically extruding it. And from here, we can then solidify it. But before we can even do that, there's some things about the flow that have to be addressed, because this thing has a very specific flow, and we're not really adhering to that flow, so they're not going to flow with us, if you jive with me. So let's move this out, and we'll just bring it up. Let's press GX and bring this here, and we have a lot of points, a lot of degenerative points that we must remove. So, you know me, I'm big on alignment and having things at least snapping to the right place, making sure I'm not just messing up a flow. You know, like I said, we're just experimenting with the workflow right now and just having some fun with it. Let's also take this time to solidify it, and we can press 4 to solidify it the way that we want. Let's press Alt X and mirror it both on the X and the Y. And let's just look at what we've created so far. So just like that, we could just call it a day, wrap it up, and just be like, yo, dog, I made a milk crate. But first of all, that looks terrible. Second of all, this isn't done until I say it's done. But really, I need to just go online and find out what the bottom of this crate looks like. Fun fact, every time I look for an image for more information, I find an image that gives me just the most terrible information. I mean, terrible for our time of finishing this in an effective manner. But let's establish some things with this crate. First of all, we're looking at a cross-sectional pattern. So before we try to grid, we see that there's an inset happening on the outside. We see that there's circles happening in the 4 corners. Ew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 across, and let us get to work. Let's look at what we had initially. It's a joke. It's gone. Let's look at our crate again, and let's get this party started, guys. But like I said, looking at ref, my least favorite thing. It's like a optometrist exam over and over that I fail. So let us just, you know, for this area, I'm going to press Y and use X because, you know, Unfiznuk by Mesh Machine is probably one of the greatest tools ever made. You know, its pitch as far as why people should have it in their pipeline cannot be overstated. You know, there's a lot of tools whenever it comes to Blender, but there are no tools like Machine's tools. So definitely recommend them wholeheartedly. So let's just bring this up and really just analyzing this corner. We probably want this corner rounded, but let's press Y and, you know, refuse it, which allows it. Let's try it again. Let's press. We don't want to change the width like that. We want to change, let's see. Let's try this. Let's try this. Y. Let's try it again. Y on chamfer. And so at least now we're back to where we started, and then we can reevaluate what we want going on. So I definitely want to round this, but I see that this is actually very sharp as it begins to jump into this. So Mesh Machine, in a way, is like destructive, non-destructive editing for edit mode, because Blender just doesn't have that. Like the ability to bevel something and unbevel it, like you better believe Blender needs that, but Blender ain't got it. Also, let's clean the mesh, remirror, just so we can get our lines back to something very pure, very innocent, unlike what we're looking at before, very guilty, very non-innocent lines. And so guess what I'm about to do? Control click flatten line, roll over, and from here let's activate view dice, where we bring up dice but we press V to use it from view. And 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. In fact, it tells us 12 here. I don't know why I'm counting, just being a weirdo. Like I said, I'm a weirdo, you guys. Let's just click, and we know that we have done a good thing. However, we are going to need to redefine our corners and get rid of some of these edges in the middle, as well as probably select this, press P to separate its selection, and let's just go in edit mode or local mode and talk about this. So this edge doesn't need to exist. This edge doesn't need to exist. So something like that. We also see that, but no, that edge is about to not only exist, but about to be unexisted again, like Beerus. So let's right click, or, you know, I really need to have circle added to right click, but, you know, right now we're having some talks about what options are worthy of adding to the right click menu, like a special menu. You know, we can't go willy-nilly, just pollute our options all over Blender, but a few things in the right click menu I think could be handy. I like how Mesh Machine has its menu creatively just all consolidated under one option. We could probably do that with our Q menu. Let's press Alt X and just take this over to the other side. We're going to grab this, scale it down, and remirror that again. You might be wondering why I'm using Mesh Machine and not just an actual mirror modifier. There's no reason. Use whatever way you want. I just like the little fade. You know, I'm hypnotized by mesh flare. You know, modeling is so boring, and all I want is to see it become just a little bit more entertaining. I don't care if the meshes twinkle a little bit, if achievements show up on the screen, but something has to be done. You know, I'd love to know, hey, you've done your 10,000th extrude. Congratulations, you know. So let's solidify. We'll press 4, and we get like some sort of like puzzling pattern. Let's press 2 and push it out both ways, and we are good to go. However, I would like to take this moment and select our boundaries and eliminate them. And, you know, when it comes to subdivision conversion, I can only just imagine what a nightmare this would be to get this to be subdued or to be subjugated by the fiend known as subdivision. But I'm that fool, and we're about to find out, aren't we? So let's S-Shift-Z, and we're just scaling this just to kind of penetrate a little bit. And, you know, do we want to go ahead and begin dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? When I'm starting to notice a pattern here with this crate. So we're going to need to do work on a side and then mirror it to another side. So, you know, really we could do this in force and not all the way across. So I'm just going to bring up dice. And we get dice using just classical dice. I love dice. You know, we want to put, I would say 6 loops, which means we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we mirror it to the other side. Let's try it again. When we mirror it to the other side, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we take that to the other side, we get that. If Mesh Machine were as crazy as us, they would also be able to deal with things from view, but views are territory. We deal with views. So you could just go in and choose something like modifier apply. We've now mirrored it from view. We've mirrored it from view again, basically filling this whole thing in. But the one in edit mode does its job. But when it comes to the hops mirror, we are very obsessive about the mirror. So we try to do all the cases that I would ever possibly run into. So I'm just going to extrude it up, and I can't really tell if it has a definite ending, but you know, just to save ourselves some pain later, let us Control B, bevel this, give it, you know, we could give it 1 loop for perimeter protection, but or 3 loops as I usually do. Press P in order to set our profile to 1. But instead, I'm just going to do 2. I've just been doing 2 lately just because I'm random. You know, it's the only way I can explain it. Like, sometimes I will randomly change up my rules just to experiment. Like, over the course of these studies, someone's pointing out someone else's polygon discipline, and it just made me think, maybe I should try 2. So, we're just trying to. Nothing to write home about. You know, gotta tell your mom, ask for permission. Just, you know, we're just rolling 2s right now. And forcing our connection to go all the way down because it looks like we offset our loop, but that's fine. This area will at least be reinforced by subdivision, and then whenever we mirror it over across itself, it won't be so bad. Siri's trying to talk to me. Get out of here, Siri. I don't need your assistance. What am I doing? I could have done this on a 4th and just continued working smart, but instead I am working dumb. Not even hard, just dumb. Just dumb. What I just did, dumb. Inefficiency of keystrokes minus demerits on myself. And so all we're doing is just trying to really protect this area because we can just start consolidating at last. I mean, pretty trashy, but let's also stop working on these second quadrants. Let's deal with the quadrants that matter. Sorry. Like I said, first rounds. Sometimes if I do a model like 4 times, I will finally start having all these mental notes in my head like, hey, extreme pain on this path up ahead. You know, just in my head, it'll just be telling me like, hey, I see you're about to make a 6-hour mistake. You sure you want to do that? Let's look at what we have. We're in this area. This area is definitely a curiosity. You know, what happened here? Who did this to you? You know, the message like, you did this, you did this. No, man, who did this to you? Who attacked you, man? Who did this? They destroyed your whole village. It was you. You did it. You're a demon. No, man, I didn't do it. Come on. I didn't do this to you. Bevel did that to you. You know, who did that to you? You know, I asked the mesh again. Who did that to you? You know, he says Bevel. Like, good mesh. And so we get in here and we're just still cleaning things up. We also need to probably clean the other side too, but you know, we're just thinking about subdivision conversion way too early. And also jumping our junction loop. You know, just having some fun. You know, if I look at the clock, I see that time has been wasted. So let's go back to object mode. I'm going to alt snap to this view. And we can press Alt X, modifier apply, Alt V. And this is what we're looking like when we turn our wireframe off. If we hit this with a sharpen, we have auto smooth. So we can at least see what that looks like. And basically we have modeled our Milkcrate. You know, once we start hiding all these darn empties, it's a lot more linear. In fact, I'm thinking about applying in the subdivision process, and I realized that, you know, only a fool would apply subdivision and then start trying to consolidate things and clean things up. So let's not do that. Let's be smart today. But we have to have this corner, you guys. If I don't have this corner by noon, oh snap, it's past noon. So we got to get this corner in. So I'm going to save the file because we've just completed it. And we could be duplicating and saving in the same file. You know, it's just how you are as a user. But for me, I just make extra files because I like to ensure that each iteration is a lower file size. I'm just weird with Blender. Don't learn from me. So let's Control A, visual geometry to mesh. We have now done the thing to this mesh. So we are going to need to bevel this and round it out, but we can't do that if our points are not merged, first of all. So we got to merge 168 points. Don't tell anyone I did that. And let's just grab this and bevel, and it looks terrible because our shape isn't set to 0.5, which we can set it to in the F9. And now we actually can get a nice bevel. So let's actually undo that bevel and grab all of our edges, and this is about as far as we can go before things just start getting wacky. And if we look at our crate from above and from the side and from below, no, I'm kidding, but like that poor guy, you know, he probably hates crates now. He's a crater. I mean, a crate hate. He's also a crater too because he hit the ground probably terribly hard. So maybe something like that is what I'm thinking. But for us to do this, I'm going to need to duplicate, press P, separate this, and we are going to just grab this edge and just Control B, bevel it. Maybe with a reasonable amount of bevels. Sometimes I get kind of crazy with bevels. I start thinking, man, I'm going to give this thing like 50 bevels. You should not. You should calm down. All right. You should, and especially if you're in a subdivision conversion process, don't be giving these things heavy bevels. Just think about subdivision and how it treats your arcs. It's going to treat your arcs like a lady. So let us select these faces and shift click extract in order to extract basically our curvature that we want. And we could just take this and perform a difference in order to basically cut this curvature in. So that's probably a little bit easier for us to manage. You know, I'm pressing Shift tilde just to see if there's any holes in this mesh, because any mistakes in the mesh is going to just be painful. And I could see that, you know, all of this is just ew. You know, why even bother? You know, we should call it a day at the phase that we're looking at now, but we're not. Let's press Alt X and press D, or press V to change it to view, press D to change our pivot to cursor, and we're just going to first mirror across and then mirror across. And we see that that first one's not going to work because we need to actually select the mesh, press Alt X, X to reset it, and we see that even our rotation is set to something odd like this, which, let's look at it from front view. We have our bevel exactly where we want it, and all we want is for that bevel to go to the other side. Well, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to press Alt X, I'll press V, I'll press A, and just mirror to the other side. So by placing that up above, now we've mirrored on the X across the X, and we can also mirror on the Y. So which mirror do we want to modify? We can either modify the first mirror in the stack or the second one, but we see that each of them offer different options. So, you know, I'm going to just go to our, let's see, where's our first mirror at? Our first mirror is here. We could press V, press A, and use cursor again. Things are getting a little confusing whenever it comes to mirror, but it's fine. You know, whenever it comes to mirror, it's so flexible that you can get in and just literally just keep stacking mirrors until you mirror the mesh exactly how you want, which I'm not saying it's the most optimal way to work, but we're done now. So there's not even a discussion to be had on it. In fact, I'm going to press C, box select all of this. We're going to try beveling it as well. And I think there's still a mesh around here. Nope, we're fine. Let's try that again though. So maybe something like this to absolutely be congruent with the area that we're about to be bringing in. So far, so good. And keep in mind, we're going to be applying, mirroring, applying, and mirroring so much, it's just going to get annoying. So let's look at this piece. This piece has a solidify on it. That means that it's clear to be merged with this piece if we so want to begin that process. So let's save our file, and select this mesh and this mesh, Q. And before we actually choose union, I'm going to turn off render visibility. So that way, whenever we do a union, it actually places it after the other modifier. So just a quick way to override on the fly if needed. And so now we take this piece and we decide that we want to union it with this as well. Let's do that. And before we do that, let's really analyze what we're about to be doing. So this piece is not cleared for it to be joined up like we're trying. So let's apply the screw. And we have our solidify, but our solidify isn't contributing to the depth of the shape in the context that we're needing to deal with it. So if we press B, we can press G, Y, bring this out, perfectly snap, select all of this side, G, Y, and we just want to conform to our proper edge. However, let's go to the other side. And also, I suspect that it could probably be hard to tell. So GY, because we're doing it from the top view and we're looking at all sorts of overlapping verts. We should just get with the program. Do you smell what the blender is cooking? And just looking at it, checking for, very strange penetrations, because this is a one-way street, guys. I mean, it could be multiple streets, multiple ways if we choose to allow it. But for me, today, one-way street, guys. So now for this area, let's press Q and bring back our bevel piece, this one. And we are going to also just work that area. And we see that it did not work out. So let's just select the piece. And we want to apply our Boolean, F, 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 and let's just F that and select all. Let's also remove any doubles. I feel like that might have been the only double in town. Weird. But now we can actually take this piece and merge it to it as well. However, I can just tell you that's not going to work. This piece ain't even manifold. Let's look at what this piece is. If we shift tilde, we need these two pieces to connect to each other. So that's a really strange proposition, I admit. How are we going to make these pieces all whole? Well, we can press F and we get that. Let's control F and choose to bridge edge loops in the edge menu. We can choose, let's see, where is it? Control E, bridge edge loop. Sometimes I bring up the face menu and I just get blinded. But now if we look at our thing through shift tilde, we see that there is nothing else part of the selection on this. So now this mesh is manifold, but it is also exceeding our current mesh. So we don't want that. In fact, we want to enable verti-mergy, and let's just bring it down. So now verti-mergy is mergy with the verties. And let's even lower our auto smooth just to see what our damage is looking like. So we're about to be making some mistakes that we're going to be committing to, but really we only have to solve 1/4 of this crate. But even that fourth, I don't want to be marred in whatever this is. All right. And it looks like I'm about to have to pause to reply to a message. No problem. And it looks like I actually did it with the wrong side. We want to actually do that side. So, silly me. Let's try this again. Oh, I'm pressing, for a minute I thought I was pressing Shift M to merge it last. I was like, oh man, did something change? No, I'm pressing Shift R. But for a brief moment, I was like, man, Shift M to merge everything at a point would be so sick. And then once we start putting loops in between, it's fine. So let's look at it from this view. We can press Alt X, press D, change it over to modifier and apply, because we just want to apply it like so. And then from here, we can look at it like so, mirror, mirror, and we are done. And now there's no longer all of these nasty convergences happening with the edges. I mean, there are a few that we're going to have to work out, but I feel like it'll be equalized when we bring it into the greater geo. So let's bool, union, cross fingers. It almost looks like it works out, right? You know, who knows what exact is truly doing to us and what hell we hath open. Truly, we don't know. We're just assuming that this exact Boolean put everything together just right, and we can now say, hey, we got in and we modeled a milk crate. However, I can guarantee you that there's so much more beneath the surface that must be addressed. In fact, I don't even know if I want that to fall so short on the penetration level. So while we have this up, we could still bring this up and solidify. And because it's part of a bunch of exact Booleans, it's just not going to play anymore. So we need to forget about the modal and just try to survive through the modifier, which is also choked to death. You know, if you're using exact Booleans, definitely expect some performance hangs. If you have a bunch of them. Sometimes with one or two, you're fine, and you, Jesus. He's like, yep, I did it. It was me. Let's bring this back. Maybe just like 0.02 just to start, and we just start bringing this out again. And it's probably for it better that we just toggle the Boolean off and begin dealing with this, because, you know, we're really getting to that asphyxiation level whenever it comes to our modifiers, and we're dealing with the cutter itself. So let's just take this value and begin dividing it. In fact, we've really made a good mess of things. Let's Control Z and bring it back to control. You know, sometimes having too many exacts, especially in these cases, we are merging some very complex geometry that this mesh just isn't going to go for. And we see that one Boolean going insane from a white window. It's just terrible. So let's put one more 0 in there, just so we can deal with that overlapping. Maybe 0.03. You know, and we're still pushing things here. And maybe something like that. I'm just thinking about how much pain I want to deal with when it comes to solving that. If we have it super shallow, it's going to be a very difficult solve. So now from here, we can Control S and save our file and jump up to the next level. And I see what's going on the bottom, and we have created such doom. You know, we're just going to be solving for the rest of our lives. Just kidding, but just looking at things, making sure everything fits up on some fourth quadrants. And let's actually begin jumping on to the final phase, which is subdivision, solving this shape. Before we can progress, there's one last area, and that is this little stick that goes down the middle. So for that, what I'm going to do is shift click Smart Apply to give myself a applied duplicate of this mesh. And with this, we can go in edit mode or local mode and just grab two edges from it, maybe the two basemost edges, and just thinking about how I want to go about getting what I want. You know, I want something like this in order to place there. So not even accurate. You know, you see how little I care. Control X, or actually X to delete faces, leaving only this left. So now we have our piece. You know, really easy process. You know, I love Smart Apply Duplicate. It just comes in handy for so many millions of things, mainly dealing with derived meshes and using them for situations that, you know, derived mesh data is still unavailable. I think there's some chatter that Blender is going to be adding something for that in the future, so We will see. We could also have it go all the way through on the inside, but you know, just think about how much pain I want to give myself today. And we already have a good amount of pain lined up for us, so let's cut this short to minimize some of the eventual pain we'll be facing. Also, this geometry isn't the most optimal. We just kind of made this geometry the best we could do out of a situation. Let's undo, Alt-X. We want to modifier apply based on view, but our origin was out of view. And so now we have this piece. And let's just bring that down. And where's this pushing from? Okay, so we have a mirror modifier going on. All right, sorry about that. And we're going to apply to solidify because I don't even need that. And we're just going to bring it. What did that do to this crate just now? All right, so that's where we were. And somehow we modified that to something unsatisfactory. So this is our piece. If we delete the mirror, we're still good to go. We probably didn't even need that mirror. And just really thinking about how wide I want this to go. We could also change our alignment to be view, where I could just press S and X. And we could just start dissolving. Get something like that. And let's select both of them. And we are just going to choose union, which will also use exact as well. So now we're looking at something like this, and we can still go in and make modifications, but we're really approaching that level where, and I actually do want to make some changes. The consistency of the shape we created compared to the one that we aspire to be like is a little bit thinner. You know, I would say even this thin. Let's Alt-X, mirror to the other side. So maybe like that. That's a little more agreeable. So let us union this together. And if everything merges, we are off to a good start. If it doesn't, we are about to open some cans of Who's Your Daddy? Just saying. So I am going to take this opportunity to basically shift click Smart Apply. It'll take a moment, of course, and then we can press Shift H, because when you use Smart Apply Clone, it's specifically going to select the object that you just added. And we're just looking at our shape, and we have a line here and we have a line here, but we don't have a line on the other side. So I'm going to press Alt-X, press D. We're going to choose bisect, but not bisect, bisect modifier, because we want to split it, but we also want to put a mirror modifier afterwards. So let's split this mesh in half and split it in half this way, and also mirror modifier it. We already had a mirror modifier present, so when we clicked it, we were deactivating it, so I just clicked to turn it back on. So now, if we press Shift tilde, we can look at all the areas that are unsatisfactory for our subdivision conversion process that we're going to need to deal with before we start dealing with the geometry that's already in an inadequate state for the subdivision conversion process. So all in all, if I were to rate this out of 10, I would say this is not bad at all. You know, I recently just made the video of the car part public. That part is probably the hardest part ever. Maybe not I've ever done in my life, but definitely will be remembered. I'll forever remember the time I was doing car parts for fun and ended up running into a bunch of one particular car part that just, the oil pump that's just, I don't know, I love oil pumps now. Not enough to replace my own oil pump, but I see the potential as far as the design mechanism. So we are just right clicking, subdividing, and Control B to make one point and a two. Let's just we could just touch these points. We don't have to press M to do all this merge business, but we see that this almost worked out. You know, they were flush. We tried to make them flush, but you know, me and Chip always are debating this as far as you know, whether exact is the greatest Boolean ever. You know, he'll swear by it. I'm like, hey, you know, that thing didn't open so much howdy doody. I would be with you in singing its praises, but howdy doody situations are definitely concerning. So let's turn off mirror in edit mode because we don't need it. I mean, this is a situation where the meshes aren't even connected, so you could just imagine how it would get adding a bevel modifier and all that stuff. I mean, a weld can't fix it, so this is just some of that exact howdy doody, you know, just to make sure you're on your toes, paying attention. That's the type of Boolean that Blender has right now. Is a, hey, if you're not paying attention, man, this Boolean will pull your pants down and throw you out into the hall while classes are changing, sort of thing. Like, this is a prankster Boolean algorithm. So S0, and then we'll merge here, merge here, merge here. Let's shift tilde, and we pretty much package those holes up with just getting to their near misses. So everything else is a level of fine. What isn't a level of fine, though, is having to do this much work all the way around. So we're gonna look at our shape from the top. I'm just gonna press numpad 4 to rotate my view a bit. Let's press Alt X, and we're going to do a view-based bisect because we're still in view. Just partying in view today. I love view. And something like that. But let's Alt X and press A. And what we want to do is bisect this, but let's make sure that we're doing it right. So tab to go back to advanced. And that is precisely what I want to do, except I don't want to put a solid face inside. So if you bisect it, it's going to attempt to fill it. So that's why bisect mod is there, because it will bisect it and then place a modifier there for you. But let's try it again. Alright, so it seems like it's getting a little weird whenever there's one already present. You know, just always something to discuss with the team. Let's also turn off view as an alignment method because we don't need that. Alt X, A, D, cursor. We're going to mirror it here, press X. Maybe jump to our second mirror that we added and then mirror that as well. You know, sometimes I just get experimental with mirror just to try to figure out the best path forward for it because, you know, our work is never done. But there's always an additional level of refinement able to be had. So we're going to be working down these floors, just subdivision converting, 10 minutes into it, and we're still just setting ourselves up, just really bracing ourselves for what we're about to be doing, just thinking about the game plan, the big game. Here it is. So let's see how we did. Subdivision. We slap it on. It's going to make us wait a good moment. And we see that subdivision is an utter disaster. So maybe we can help it. Let's turn off subdivision. Let's go in and put a triangulate mod. Then let's add a subdivision. So now we're waiting on subdivision again. You know, one of the things about subdivision as an auditor is subdivision has a speed hit that's definitely apparent. So if you're trying to follow this stuff on a potato computer, I don't know what to tell you. You know, probably void subd or use subd low or use simplify or whatever you got to do to make it work. And it looks like the side that we cut off didn't actually get the stick going down the middle. So we didn't even do a good job there. Let's turn off what we have going on and look at what we have. And I'm going to need to press X and come out of local mode, and we're going to need to grab the original mesh again, which is this one. But this mesh somehow got trashed. So let's just Control Z until we just get somewhere, which is also a decision one can make in Blender. Just Control Z in until they get where they need. And it looks like this is about as far as they're going to let us go. So how are we going to get back that piece that we lost? Well, I'm going to go to the collection of cutters that contains it. Let's find which side of this it's real. and we're just going to mirror this across itself. So Control M, Y. Let's try that again. Okay, so our origin's not even in the middle. We'll just use 3D cursor, Control M, Y, in order to place it on the other side. So 3D cursor is always good for you whenever it comes to these sort of processes. So we are going to just union this together, which I could tell you is going to be a disaster. But now we actually have the piece on all sides. So, or we did for a moment until we broke everything. So now we have to apply it and then go ahead and deal with that all over again. So now this piece has been merged into this area, or not yet. Now it's been merged in. And then from here, it's now being mirrored over to the other side. So if we press Shift tilde, we can see what we left out on. You know, I had a little fun with Sub D and kind of lost sight of what we were doing. However, I also saw that we kind of destroyed the master that we based this off of. So it's kind of a one-way street. We only have success. We burnt our boats. So why did this area not work out? I'm going to extrude this down to here and delete any interior faces I see. Shift tilde, and we see that there are still interior faces. Interior faces are never good. Let's press H, and we see that this also has interior faces. All levels have interior faces. So, you know, while I would love to just jump to that final process of solving subdivision once and for good and vanquishing the demons of topology that exist before us, we have to at least even convince the townspeople that it's a battle worth fighting, because, you know, there's sheltering demons in these houses. You know, every village house holding demons and interior faces, you know, all a special type of demon. A demon you don't want to have nothing to do with. So a little bit of this as well can get out of here. You know, we have these other faces hidden. One, two, three, four. X, delete. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So much redundant selection if we were just smart mirroring, but it's fine. We'll just get in here, and this is what we're looking at. Let's press Alt H and select everything, Shift tilde, and the only questionable area that remains is, let's try it again, is right here. This is connected, but this area is not connected. In fact, we'll leave that edge living. Shift tilde, just to see what we're getting. Turn off mirror, and we're almost there. And what I'll have to do is delete that, and let's set our origin in the right place, so that way we can press D, bisect modifier, change our pivot point or our orientation to be view, so that way we can just split this down the middle. And then when we press Alt X and press A, we can just add a new modifier, and then press X to go to our other modifier. But I do see that we should probably make it jump to your last modifier when you're jumping into edit. But now we actually have only this to deal with. So now 15 minutes into the subdivision conversion process, we haven't converted a single darn thing. So let us just go under add modifier, add a triangulate, add a subdivision, and see what we get. And this is definitely not a subdivision mesh, but it just goes to show what work we have outlined for us, and or underlined for us to have to get in and deal with, and the struggles that we will have to fight with getting this to become a good subdivision surface. In fact, for this particular shape, I'm pretty sure it doesn't even need subdivision, but we're just being obsessive and weird, and you know, that's what I'm all about on this channel. And I want to rotate it so it's actually the correct way, because we ended up working on like a far corner, and that far corner isn't my corner. But we can't get in and just start shrinking it. Also, we got to turn off Subdivision for a while. It's just tacking up our style. So let's get in and start dealing with this. And we see that inset isn't going to be as good a friend to us as we thought. So let us just take this loop around like so, and we could just form this connection. This edge doesn't actually need to exist in the grand scheme of what we're dealing with, but I'm just thinking about potential strategies for how we could solve. The first thought that comes to my mind is, you know, going up and down, up and down, up and down, which is sometimes what's required. So we might as well hit her with the old up, down, left, right, hold A, press start. Just kidding. I wish there was a cheat code. Also, we want to get out of Boxcutter for edit mode because it's just going to get in the way. And that's just W. So keep in mind that Boxcutter can be opened for both object mode and edit mode if desired. And we could dissolve edges not needed. And we're just connecting these first points into the mix like so. So nothing serious for this first round. However, we can tab out and look at how Subdivision is treating the mesh and have a really good insight as to what we're looking at. And there I was correcting just a little bit of modifier mishap that appeared to have occurred. Sometimes Knife will rearrange your modifiers when using it, just like a Boolean, which is a rule that I tend to have renegotiated. But for now, we are just working our really short track, and we should probably just keep this mesh a surprise until we're just about done, instead of just jumping straight to the conclusion every time, just seeing how each of our solutions are working out. But I could see some areas on this definitely being tricky. Let's form our connection here, removing these edges from being needed in the running. We also can just forge this connection, even though it's probably not necessary and is going to equal our doom. Also, there is some definite howdy-doody on this mesh. So let's select everything and remove by distance. And we removed 111 verts. Gee willikers. And I see that there's an interior face happening here. And we're probably good to go, aside from something I can only describe as howdyous doodious Maximus. Just kidding. But it is some howdy doody, isn't it? I wish that you could use snap to snap things, but you cannot. Let's shift tilde and look at this again. And we just got rid of those icky interior faces that were going to be causing us pain and problems. And oof, right, like dealing with all of that is going to be just a pain. So I am going to just grab this and we'll bring it down to here. So much merging that has to happen here. Merge it last. Here's another can of that howdy doody. And you know that you got it right when you can actually just dissolve an edge. Otherwise, it did not merge. So what's happening here You know, such a merger is just not going to go through without a hitch. We also have this edge happening down here, which we could probably get rid of, but I'm not going to yet. GY. What is happening with this mesh? I feel like there's a secret face. This face. Which means that this area needs to be stitched. And this is like the nitty gritty of like Blender right here. Like the true pain that can happen in Blender. Like this is it right here. It's like the only reason that I'm even showing this, because you know we could avoid it by changing the Boolean modifier and using fast and all the opportunities where it could have been used, because this mesh is more offset than it is not offset. So we could have just used fast and just did everything just normal as if exact didn't exist. But I am determined to understand exact, you know, both as a user and also because our tools happen to deal with it. So having a deep understanding of it on an intimate level allows us to more readily troubleshoot customers and understand their issues with less context than, you know, hey, the Boolean's not working, which is a common message we get. It's like, hey, the Boolean's not working. It's like, all right, thank you. That's the Vegas reply so far, or the Vegas support issue so far. But, you know, when you say, hey, the exact isn't working, I'll definitely say, yeah, it happens, doesn't it? That thing's a toughie. No doubt about that. Like that exact sure is a ninny, isn't it? You know, I'll say say something like that just because it is. You know, exact can be a ninny sometimes, and our current work is just proving that. But we are getting somewhere. So just cleaning up, doing a little mesh formality, and just getting in there, because, you know, just because it's a crate, like, oh man, MX is doing a crate. Well, the hardest darn crate you've ever seen, just kidding, but the hardest crate I've ever seen, this crate is a pain. So we do have interior loops on the inside that we can capitalize. And because of the flows that we try to force and keeping everything congruent via a form of planning that, you know, Batman didn't afford me, but I was able to, we were able to really fit these connections. But, you know, you definitely want to think about some of these things in advance, because if I were trying to hit some 8s and some 32s and start bringing some 32s and 16s together, you better believe that I would be howling in pain, because, you know, that sort of thing is I did it as a example to kind of show how difficult it can be, but it's definitely something you'll run into in your work. And, you know, unless you're transferring your normals, you're either going to do really great or struggle with it. So with this one and this one, we want to just forge that connection since it doesn't appear to exist. And, you know, once you start hand looping, you just know that you're sacrificing the roundness of what the subdivision is going to give you as a gift, the sacred gift. And just looking at this, thinking about what paths to go, and we're just working our way upstairs, you know, just changing every light bulb in the building. Even if your light bulbs are fine, we're just changing out the light bulbs. You know, I've been meaning also to remap my, for this one's definitely a curiosity. We'll have to do something like this in order to make that accommodate. And we won't ask any questions about what we just did to the area downstairs, but the neighbors aren't going to like that. I'll tell you that right now. And we'll hear about it come tax time when we let the subd show us what it has solved for. So, you know, in my head I'm pondering, you know, what event led to these these uneven Stevens to pop up. Like maybe at some point I forced an additional loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. No time to dwell. Let us just get in here and get converting. So as I've been doing this kind of Subd challenge, I've just been kind of making a mental note of all my least favorite hotkeys to press so that they can be eliminated. So we may be dealing with something like it in the future. However, a common complaint with hops is that it's hard to learn and it's too complex. So adding topological tools to it might not be the best idea, but still rolling around scenarios in my head. Also weighing the option of just not doing anything, which is always so very easy, I'm telling you. Sometimes it's easier to just not even try. Like this crate, we probably should not have even tried it, but look at us now. So I'm going to add a loop, and that loop is going to terminate at the first triangle, of course. Classic triangle. Let's see all the way across. Press Z to cut through, just so we can get everything to meet up nicely. Merge at last, merge at center, and then we could just grab this single edge, bevel it, and we're fine. And do the same thing here. Just Control-Shift-B, bevel one edge, and we're good to go. We do want to get rid of any redundant edges that we have created, like this one. Probably not needed. And we also have tools for flatten too. But I like to keep it vanilla just to keep it fluid for those who may not be familiar with our toolkit, because these skills that are being discussed and showcased and talked about, these are your backbone. You know, if you don't know this stuff, whenever you run into problems, you're just going to, your first question is, hey, is there a tool to do this? You know, that shouldn't even be your first question. Your first question should be, how do I do this? How do I do this just in general? You know, you should just attempt it. You know, I get people who write me and it's speculative requests. It's like, hey, how would you feel if I did this? Get out of here. Do it. Do the thing. What you write me about an idea you possibly have. Get out of here. Same thing. You know, get in there and just try. You know, try and see what your solution could be, because, you know, with your brain, you could come up with something that no one else has ever come up with before. And so, you know, sometimes I do that with my girlfriend. It pisses her off so bad. Like, I'm like, I need you to research into this thing and give me your opinion on it. She's like, well, what about your research? Why don't you just give me your research? I'm like, no, I need your opinion, because if I tell you mine, it's going to sound really negative and will inform your opinion. So I need you to get an opinion, and then if you hold a counter to mine, then I can respect that, and we could go from there. But if I just tell you my opinion, then it'll be so strongly pitched that you'll have no choice but to be on my side. And this little edge in here, a little jerk, don't want to get selected. And I'm going to right click subdivide in order to just slide an edge over, and we're just going to quad this out. And I'm so doubtful of this mesh's ability to even solve to subdivision, because it's just so sparse on the geo. We're going to be doing some hard work. You know, this could be a time for us to employ creases, where basically we press Q and we S sharpen it, which will mark the edges sharp that need to be sharp, allowing it to better hold the form. So maybe something like that will work better for us, at least with conveying what's going on. I mean, if we turn off wireframe, we've now made this a subdivision mesh, but our geo doesn't look like a subdivision mesh. It looks like a Boolean mesh made subdivision. So let's Control R, and we see that our loops flow. We're flowing, guys. Heavy flows. And what I also want to do is reinforce the fronts, even though it's kind of unnecessary, but you don't know me and unnecessary, just kidding. But we do want to get in and just get some loops in. And one of my least favorite maneuvers is pressing K and C and Z to get to the other side. I'm already discussing some concepts around that could possibly mitigate the process, but you know, the thing is that all these points just went the same direction. So having to do that for all of those is just, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm telling you, I get fed up with a step. One day it's like, you know what, 1,000,001, no more. No more. No more of that step. I just can't let it live another day. And so when we come out, we see that our topology is looking good for this area. So now we need to begin working around this area, which I can tell you is just not going to be fun. But also we need to finish what we were doing with our geometry here, because we didn't even finish it. We need to select those 2 points and make them connect, but they're not going to connect the way we want. So we got to place an edge in the middle. This is a big n-gon, so we probably need a loop happening there, but instead I'm just going to solve it to there. And we definitely over sharpen it because all of these edges shouldn't even be sharp. These are not sharp marked edges. This is because our S-sharp threshold was a little low whenever we ran it, but it's fine. Let's look at this area. Why is this marked sharp? Suspicious. And we tab back out and just take a look at what we have. And you know, it's getting cleaner and cleaner. But I don't like having to work in the back. You know, I shouldn't have to work in the back of my own mesh. You know, as if there's people in the front of my mesh, you know, who have already taken precedence. So we are just going to forge us some lifelong connections that we'll maintain into our old age. I'm already starting to daydream about playing Ghost of Tsushima on PS5, but let us finish this up. Because yesterday or the day before I was working on a handle tutorial and I got stuck on the computer I was on and I wasn't able to progress in it. I was like, man, I think I made a mistake. I don't understand the mistake I made, so I need to do more advanced troubleshooting on my process to really analyze what went wrong. But I went and got on a different computer in the living room, and on that computer I also got stuck. I was like, wait, what did I do wrong? I'm just looking at that one. And it's just not right enough. You know, like I said, these models, you spend your life trying to get them absolutely right based off of CAD designs, be my guess. But for me, I will definitely draw a line at some point. So for this area, I'm just going to draw a box, press Ctrl X, and we're just going to force a loop there. For this area, we are just going to draw a loop as well. And it almost seems like it's performing well, except that, you know, when we go into pause mode, it actually can run even faster. So we're just cutting in loops just to get all the way through, because these penetrative loops will definitely help us ground what we're going for. Alright, and machine select's getting in my way, so I will need to go to my preferences and search for mesh machine. And because I'm not trying to select vertex groups, I'm just going to uncheck machine select, because this thing has been getting in my way for this entire month, and just replacing certain functions in Blender, just telling you they're dangerous propositions. I mean, I'm not against people customizing Blender, but the best way I can explain it is I try to approach Blender from a vanilla standpoint in order to be the most welcoming to new users who are watching my content. So if I start you know, remixing it, it will definitely change that learning experience. And so it's almost more for you guys' benefit than it is for mine, because if I wasn't recording videos, I would definitely be working a lot differently and would remap a lot of this stuff. But I'm always trying to understand what the devs were going for. I'm not saying you should as well, but I'm obsessed with understanding the why of why they did it, you know. And most of the time it's because, you know, why not? why not? Just did it. So we could just turn these tries that go all the way around into full-ons, full-on quads. We're going to have to right-click and subdivide, and we see that every area that we thought it merged, it did not merge. And so we're having to get in and do some really intimate cleaning. In fact, I wonder if there's something we could have done to prevent all of these endings from getting what they got, or if that's literally a byproduct of Solidified to work the way it does. It has to evaluate it on a really simplistic level. Not complaining about it, just curious in how it works. And we'll leave that one for now. Shift tilde. And I bet the other side is also wacky doodle. Well, that is just tragic. And once you're able to dissolve an edge, you know that you've got it. But I could just tell from the way that an edge moves, the way she dances, that it's just not working out. So let's continue on. And you know, if that happened there, it also happened here. It probably happened darn everywhere. So let's just snap them. You know, we don't even have to be dealing with all this merge business. And once you're able to remove the point, you know that you've done it right. And we're going to be dealing with this fight everywhere. So I am doubtful of anyone still watching this video at this point. So I am going to just begin talking about randomness. So I ran up to my girlfriend earlier and I was like, the new Cowboy and Bebop movie's coming. You want to watch it on Netflix? It's like, we never even watched the anime. You want to watch the anime? And I just walked off because I've never seen the anime. And you know, I was just pondering in my head. I was like, you know, maybe we should watch it. Just watch the show before we watch the anime. But she was like, I guess you didn't want to watch it because you just walked away. I was like, no, I was pondering it. I was just rationalizing in my head. I don't know. I'm a weirdo. I'm telling you. Like sometimes I get stricken by indecision, like a Final Fantasy status element. What is going on with this mesh? We'll come back to it. Let's just merge these points. And do we have these meshes behaving? Let's remove doubles by distance and maybe raise our threshold just slightly. I mean, maybe not too much, because I know that we're probably eating someone's lunch later. And the worst thing is to be eating a bunch of lunch, enjoying it, and realizing you're eating your own lunch. And you now don't have lunch anymore. So we just want to make sure. I just don't even know what to say about these howdy doodies anymore. It's just a wow. Yeah, that's what Owen Wilson would say. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna watch Cowboy Bebop the anime. Just get in there, check it out since I've never seen it. Proxy is in love with the anime. He always talks about it. So I think, yeah, I promised him I was going to watch it too. However, Proxy also convinced me to just give Star Trek a binge. So I've been meaning to get around and do that. Just model for like 500 hours of endless grinding of practice just while watching Star Trek, you know, find out if it is better than Star Wars. 'Cause, I mean, Star Wars is kind of terrible. You know, I liked Rogue Assault or Rogue Squadron, but other than that, it's just a bunch of space drama and Kylo Ren. So let's look at this area. Just atrocious. You know, is there any area you can trust? No. No, there's not. And this is still just us just getting in and setting up the next battle. But it literally does get like this. But it won't be like this forever. You know, I'm talking smack about today. In the future, I'll probably be coming back saying, hey, that's history, bro. That's that's in a multiverse that never came to pass because it was neutered as a bug. And that's always an exciting thing. Wow. This area, whose edge is that? We don't even know. So let us just grab this point, connect it here, grab this point, connect it here. And let's just GZ, bring it here. Maybe slide out just a smidgen. And we're really pushing it with what we're trying to do there. But that area is now connected. And let's continue on. So this area, a mess. Did that improve the mess? Only one way to find out. Well, this one, just terrible. And I saved out iterations as follow because I'm going to probably send these on just to say, you know, hey man, I opened another can of get the hell out of my program. No, I'm kidding, but that's what you could call it. You could call this a good can of get the hell out of this program, or hey, it's a good time to go to lunch now, which it is a good time to go to lunch. I could probably do for some lunch right now, but I'm a starving modeler. I'm always starving when I'm modeling. It gives you the ambition to go on. You know, I need to have my nutritional drink to start my day, so I'm just like 0 energy at noon, killing polygons for you guys, killing myself over polygons for you guys. So let's just bring these points over and merge them. And maybe not that point, let's dissolve that point. And everywhere where these little half solutions came about, we have to resolve them. And the only way to do it is by truly dissolving the edges that are in the middle of them. So it could be just overshoot. I mean, maybe on my off time I'll go back and test to see if offset is what caused it to evolve into what we're looking at now. But I am doubtful. I mean, it could very well be. Someone else would say it would be unapplied scales, but you know, hey man, things are going to be scaled. I can't be applying scales on even my Booleans. So I'm going to draw a box around this area, something like that, and we see that spacebar. I mean, subdivision is just so pricey. So let's do that again. This time not raycasting over a mesh because that would be bad. And we can dissolve these two edges because we've now handed new edges in to be their guidance, which is how that happens. So let's right click, subdivide. Let's grab these two, turn into 2 again. We're just merging all these just misconnections because they are all demons. This area, what do you think that is due to? It's due to lack of guidance. There's no guidance edges to alleviate what would happen with this end-gon if we removed it. So that's why I'm able to just go in and dissolve it like so. Let's put an edge here, but we don't want a circle. We want a box. And that was a disaster. Let's do it from this view. Something like that. And we are going to definitely be needing some reinforcements happening with these edges when the time comes. But something's wrong here. I'm going to attribute it to lack of guidance edges. And that area has been resolved. So now it's just this area. So how bad is it? Well, let's just connect these points. They're probably not that bad. Let's dissolve that. We're good to go. Let's bring these, dissolve that, and we're good to go. So for me, I look at this whole adventure as just getting an understanding of what Booleans and Subdivision have been up to lately, because sometimes it's just good to check and just make sure that certain things are progressing certain directions, you know. So we see that Boolean and Subdivision have kind of a rough relationship this moment, and we did not want to do that. Let's push this back up to the top. Control-Shift-B, W to exit. And before we actually consolidate like we were trying, we'll do something like that. And same thing to this side. You know, we don't need all of these areas converging onto triangles and ending, because they're going to be loop enders, and we need loops that are going to flow across all of this. So something like that, and let's tab out of edit mode. And we look at this, and we're just getting ever so closer to our goal. If we really wanted to reinforce this area, we could just add some loops to this area, because it's just lacking reinforcement in these mirror junction areas. So something like that, and then we'll slide to the other side. And because we n-gon this up pretty good, there's not a lot of flows flowing around right now, but we can at least maintain what's going on in our center area whenever it comes to our crate. So when it comes to the subdivision conversion, we're making progress, even though it's very minimal and we're moving so slowly because of the type of shape that we're dealing with. And we'll just dissolve that. And I keep going out to object mode to look at things, but really it's not completely necessary. Let's tab back in, and let's just get in and start dealing with things. I'm just going to add a loop and then snap it. That way we take advantage of what flows existing instead of forcing it in with knife. And some of these loops that we added just to protect this may come in handy later, so we might as well just add them to the family. You know, a few loops ain't gonna hurt anybody. Something like that. And then we could always just dissolve anything in excess that we've created. So I'm thinking the next thing we should do is probably deal with the grading, because the grading is going to be the hardest part to convert to sub D. So we have to actually remove all of our markings, and we have to begin talking about the honest truth of this mesh, which is this. This is what our mesh is looking like. And so now let us go in and finally wrap this up for good. All right, back in business. So we tab into edit mode, and now let us begin dealing with this object in earnest. So we've went in and double checked and triple checked and still failed to get all of the areas that are inadequate. So we will deal with those now. And of course we could tell that we got them right by the ability to dissolve edges. If we look at this side, we see that this isn't connected. It just wants you to think it's connected, but it's just lying to us. So merge it last, we see that it still isn't truly connected until we merge it last, and then we finally dissolve that edge. Let's hide this face and just check for interior faces. And we just need to make sure that there's no other places, because the longer that we let them live, the more weird things we'll get. But with an object as complex as this, you know, its complexity is hidden. You know, people just walking all over these things. But here we've shown that a crate is definitely an object to revere and fear. So how do we want to begin adding these loops? Well, we've been playing with a lot of Boxcutter today, so we might as well just... Ooh, what does that hang? Let's press escape. And we want to turn off render visibility for these mods so they don't get moved around. And let's try that again. And such a hang for this moment of the apply process. And, you know, really it's all because of Subdivision. You know, Subdivision's evaluation on the mesh is just so heavy, even at just one level. Let's see how we're looking with a tight loop contingency. So something like that. Let's just remove subdivision and let's see how the mesh performs now. You know, it's just buttered. So there's a talk internally about how we should deal with subdivision and its relationship with meshes, but you know, generally in terms of Boolean workflow, subdivision isn't present in your stack, so these sort of things aren't having to come up, but really some sort of decision is going to have to be made, and Linebox is definitely the best tool for this job of just getting in and looping all of these X junctions. I mean, we still need subdivide on the mesh. I wonder if we could add it, have it invisible completely, and it would still cause us issues like we've been seeing with it, but we'll just have to find out. So, you know, just adding loops, maybe this loop isn't needed, but just reinforcing areas, you know, some of these loops could just be dissolved, but we're just going to keep them for now. But this is definitely an interesting use of Linebox compared to, first of all, what it was initially born for, and also what I use it for, which is just drawing boxes at angles. But as I was thinking about what I'm about to be having to do, I was like, you know, I'm about to be having to put these 4 loops in. I wonder if there's a way I can just cut them in, just utilizing Knifebox. And Knifebox, you know, its job is literally to imply geometry. You know, it's the implications of geometry is what Knifebox aims to do. Unless your mesh isn't live, then you know you're gonna have to apply some things before you can begin cutting additional data into it. And also, Knifebox is not non-destructive at all. There's no non-destructive variant of Knifebox. You can't just shift to live and modify it after the fact because it needs to perform the knife project operation immediately. Like maybe 10 minutes ago it needed to. And we're just adding loops. You know, this extra loop that it's giving us doesn't even matter. And we could even go further. We could start cutting using Gridbox, but I didn't want to get to that level yet. But, you know, it gets fun. Box. We don't want Hop Smart, but we do want Linebox. I accidentally alt-scrolled to the next one. And just old habits kick in, and I just bring up the D to change it explicitly to where I want to go. And so far so good when it comes to us reinforcing it. However, we're only reinforcing it on the angles that we're dealing with. We still need to reinforce it on the side perpendicular to us, the viewer. So I'm just pondering as I'm buying time doing this, you know, am I going to use an inset? Am I going to inset it and then try to tighten it and have an additional loop contingency to manage? Or, you know, what am I going to do? Like I said, this whole video's point is the challenge of myself to just think on the fly, which is definitely a different type of modeling tutorial than any of the other ones that I have. The ones where I just gotta just think. But it's fun, you know. I try to actually promote this to other people. I'm like, yo man, you ever tried thinking? You know, what do you think the answer is? You gotta tell me, what do you think the answer is? I gotta understand why people aren't coming to these conclusions. But like I said, we're hours deep in this video. If you're still watching this, you're probably doing something else, or are lonely, or are a super fan, or are a clone of me being trained in a lab, and I'm just on a loop in a cryogenic chamber as the next generation is being made. Let's go ahead and put subdivision back on a mesh because I miss it. You know, you can take subdivision out of the mesh, but you can't take the mesh out of subdivision. Just kidding. That's not a saying anywhere, and never repeat it. So let's look at what we have here. We have one loop, but what I want is 2 loops. And we could actually have this triangle convergence happen in the middle, and then we just hit it with a loop in order to break it. I mean, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is I don't want these geometry convergences happening in triangulated areas, you know. Definitely not that. So let us just select these points, press J, and we're just adding a loop. And I don't even know what's happening up above where our loop is, but I bet that it went well for it. You know, I bet our loops are up here winning all sorts of Academy Awards for best supporting loops in a undefined mesh. You know, all the typical mesh-based awards that you would give a mesh while you're blabbering nonsense in the middle of a multi-hour epic about crates. You know, I did this to be funny about the whole crate gag, but who's left? Look at Subdivision being so cruel to edit mode me. Let's just turn it off completely, and we see that it's just perfectly fine. So something will definitely be done about that. The proper question is what, you know, because hasty decisions make for hasty bug fixes and even more fixes after that, and then we're just fixing things. So I like to deliberate on things. You know, it seems like we put out a ton of updates, but it's mainly because so much deliberation has already gone into it. By the time it ever makes it out to you guys, it's actually been internal for a moment, and we've just been kind of sitting on it, just figuring out the right time to fit it into your guys' lives. Ooh, I'm making big mistakes. Let me undo. What am I doing? What am I doing? Seriously though, what was I doing? You gotta watch it when you're zoning out. You might zone out, do a serious mistake. C Z to cut through. K C Z. Let's press E, and we're just gonna continue from that and do another one. And all we did was just cut all the way around while just maintaining our flow. But we definitely don't want to break into this area yet. If we tab out of edit mode and we turn on our subdivision, we can see at least how we're faring with it. But since it's interfering with knife and it's mobility, we gotta keep that thing just out of the running for now. So now we're gonna have to harden every corner. And while I've been using Linebox for this, Box and specifically View and turning off dots will be the ticket. You know, I could write a love song about Box, just a cutter Box. I am such a big fan of Box as a cutter. It's so lightweight, so low, so nimble, so quick. It's the perfect cutter. You know, like, of course, we need end gun, we need curve, we need all this other stuff. But whenever it comes to just 4 to 8 points of just danger, get her done, you look no further than Box, because Box is just lightning in a bottle. It's just so fast, so powerful, and it's the center of Boxcutter. You know, if you ask the user, hey, if there's one tool you could remove from Boxcutter, you know, one shape, what shape would you remove? You know, most people would probably say, you know, I'd probably get rid of Box, you know, and I would fight those people, because Box is proven. That's the only way I could put it. Like, Box is proven. It's been there for me in the hardest times of my life, and it will continue to be there. You know, 8 sides of Who's Your Daddy. However, we are going to select this and press GG to slide it away from itself so we can hopefully get it even. But this area is getting out of touch. So let's just simplify that. And now with all of these boxes, if we tab out and we activate subdivision, we see that all those areas are now protected. And we see that subdivision is just cruel. Subdivision is going to hate us by the end. It's like, hey, why'd you call me in here? You know damn right that this isn't a situation for me. It's like, yeah, no. But this is how users be thinking, man. Users be thinking, I need subdivision on every single mesh ever made. And I used to actually refer to those users as cookie born, because, you know, when I was watching Blender cookie content, I always felt that they leaned very heavily into subdivision and never really discussed the implications of it, because there are a lot of implications with sub-D. Like, there's a good chance with sub-D you're going to be looking at a scene that's heavier, but also it's just so expensive. It turns every edge into 4 and then 4 into 16. It's just so exponential. I'm no math magician, but it's just so cruel. Just such a cruel master. In fact, using this has actually shown me that, you know, I'm definitely not using call center computers anymore. Like, I used to use some call center computers, and when people would call with internet problems, I would just choke out the computer. You know, like, my boss would be wanting me to do stuff, and I would just immediately just choke out the computer, just You know what? I've slapped this with eight levels of subdivision, and this computer is freaking out, sir. You know, and it took them a while before they realized there was this program called Blender in the background that was basically a virus choking out computers. But nowadays, on this computer, this is Subdivision being nice, guys. You don't even want to see Subdivision being not a nice guy. But we're just getting in here and just making our connections ever so gradually, just really walking across every great crevice and everything. Something like that. And then we can form this connection as well. And it starts getting a little dicey in here, pardon the pun. But as you see, you know, everything's fairly linear when it comes to this geometry. Like if we maintain certain rules as we continue working with what we're carrying from loop to loop, and then just make sure those connections end in a satisfactory way, it won't go bad for us. And all these areas where we see our loops ending, we know for a fact that these are where there's some endings that are needing to be made. So just getting in here, and I'm just really just kind of rolling with raw subdivision solutions today, not trying to be fancy or come up with any redirectional knowledge to drop on you guys. Just, I mean, it's a crate. And also, I am beginning to get hungry. I think I'm going to, I'm just thinking about what I want to eat. Or who I, no, I'm kidding. We're not eating people yet. But, you know, I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima. And, you know, the plot of the game is like, you know, some invaders came to your island, start hurting people. Man, I'd be so mad. I would literally, oh man, if I start saying that, I'll probably say something cancelable. But I just start eating people. You know, you're my enemy, man. I'm gonna have to eat you, man. It's the only way to put fear in these other people. Like sometimes I look at dead bodies in movies, I just think about the amount of meat they are. I'm just like, man, that's like a ham. You know, they blow a guy's leg off. I'm like, man, imagine I'm not a cannibalist or anything. It probably sounds like I am, but I don't know. I just always think it out loud. I'm just like, you know, or to myself, you know, maybe not telling my girlfriend, contemplating the, you know, minutia of people eating, but just something to ponder. I mean, maybe not, but you watch out if you come on my battlefield. You're going to become a goulash. You know, there's a good chance that you're going to end up in a crock pot mixed up with some elbow macaroni and served to a family. So we see that our loop ends here, which means that our connection just must continue. Yeah, as I do this, sometimes I ponder if I should have like a perma loop, right? Like as we're working, we just see a loop that's like permanently displaying that just shows us what our flow is, but there's no edge loop to be added. It's just a kind of edge loop indicator because it would determine a lot of my decision solving. And I really need to remap J to be one of my mouse buttons, but I just haven't got around to doing it yet. But on my keyboard, the hotkey press of J is actually really nice. I got this really glided pad, but I have been taking into mind certain hand gestures I've been making, and if we should begin, you know, neutralizing those as well, because I don't even like moving my hand very far. You know, like I was talking about in the sculpt videos, like I used to have a big Wacom, but I got rid of it because, you know, I was worried I was about to have gorilla power upper body strength. And, you know, my girlfriend isn't ready for that. She's ready for me to just beat on my chest, start throwing banana pills at her, and, you know, going, or, you know, that sound he makes whenever he passes, you know, Mario Kart. But we're just getting in here, just getting down to a crate, just solving all these boxes we added. We added so many box cuts, and we were talking about how just great and nimble boxes. And then here's the truth. The truth is we have to get in and solve some box. You can't talk box, not solve box. You know, if you're not a box, don't be a box. Just kidding. No one in this field has ever said that either. I'm just making up sayings, you know, but these are sayings you pass on to new artists. Like, don't be a box, man. Be like, what? What does that mean? It's like, don't be a box, just be a box. You know, what else are we going to talk about? Pressing J for the 1 millionth time. You know, we've already established that talking about hotkeys being displayed on screen is an inefficient use of time. So I want to reinforce this, but it's already reinforced. You know, they already got a chair up against the door. So how do we want to solve this? If we start giving this like reinforcement loops, it's just going to get sticky. And if we give this reinforcement loops, we could give it one reinforcement loop and it'll be a lot more controllable. But if we try to give it like a 3 and do a redirect on such sparse geometry, probably going to be a long day. Probably going to be not eating lunch yet or anytime soon. But I'm telling you, I see this mesh just, it's getting some get right, you know. And we have tools to add edge loops. Like whenever it's, you know, the thing is these active tools are for reducing these repetitive operations. In fact, how do we do it custom though? We don't want it to, there we go, something like that. And then we use the active tools and we see that the active tools are actually equipped to be a reducer of some of these repetitive strokes. But you just got to begin programming it into your mind. Like in the videos where I was talking about bevel and stuff, as far as Blender goes, you know, the active tool versions are still very cool. It's just, they got to leave. They got to leave so fast and so hard. And that sounds really mean, but what I mean is, you know, when you're done with those tools, they got to leave. They got to go, man. They can't be standing around. My parents are coming home. Like, just have loop cut, just keep loop cutting. Dad's walking in the door, you know, can't be having that happen. So, and that's the thing about active tools that drives me kind of nuts is they just hang out. And I mean, Boxcutter was perfect for Boxcutter because we were starting to get to the point with Boxcutter where we were like, I haven't exited Boxcutter for like 6 days. It's like same dog. So that one fits, but you're not going to be beveling on a multi-year Iliad. You're just not. So let's tab out of edit mode, save our settings, save our scene because we've done so much work. I mean, we're 19 minutes into this, and now this video is the true subdivision conversion process, and we see that it's just short work because we don't have all this howdy doody in our way. So, you know, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, man, MX is inefficient, well, geez, just wait, you know, because we can make it a lot more efficient. But it's important for people to understand these foundational fundamentals because you know, you can't just replace them. You need a backbone to help you retain your form, because if you just, you know, I think I've already said, if you base everything off of tools without some sort of understanding of an alternative, you know, you really run a risk of creating a dependency situation. And we know for sure that all the stuff we do is pretty easily able to be done just in vanilla Blender because our goal is to really enhance that experience. But I mean, same thing with, you know, especially normal transfer. Like one of the things I did enjoy about Mesh Machine was by messing with its normal transfer, I had definitely an understanding about normal transfer because I was able to add it and remove it so fast and transfer this and transfer that and just look at it. And I was like, damn, this is a hell of a mod. No wonder everybody's so crazy over it, but everybody's so crazy over it. So I look at it like some hot stuff. I don't see anything we could add to the table. So cloning features is literally a waste of time. There's no need to be doing that unless it can be done better, unless there can be an improvement or a variation done, or take it in a path that it wasn't on previous to really take it forward. Probably not. Just let them have it. Like I think I mentioned in a previous video, you know, we're always talking about pipes and piping and stuff like that, but as always, gotta solve a need. can't just, pipes are hot, so we're on the pipes now, guys. You know, that makes us a bunch of pipe heads. Got to think about if something new can be brought to the table. Just like cables, you know, Cablerator comes back time and time again, adding things new to the table, thus validating he has a direction and plan in mind. So, you know, when we entered this field, all the tools were dead. It was just a tool graveyard is what I refer to it as. It was just a graveyard of dead tools because no one cared. And that was the hole I saw. I was like, huh. Well, I could care. I could care so much that the name that we create will become synonymous with a particular workflow. And that is, you know, where HardOps came from was Bool tool ended. And, you know, that sucked. I mean, not for... It just sucked to me, not suck in general. The guy was literally done. Victor Bobbio, he was done. He was like, I'm done with Bool tool. There's nothing else to add to it. Here's some cool tips with it. And I'm now being ascended to heaven like Epoch, or I forget which Old Testament character got taken to heaven, because there's not a lot of people that went to heaven, but I think it was Epoch that was taken to heaven. Anyways, not getting religious here, just little biblical trivia. You know, I come from a Bible town, so I've read the Bible more times than your average Christian, despite following the hawk. You know, if you wonder what hawk, just insert your hawk. You know, find a hawk in the sky. That hawk, I follow that hawk. You know, Tony Hawk. You know, Hawk and Dove from the Titans show that's freaking terrible. Let's turn it back on again and just really look at this, and we're really getting somewhere. Like this area I just saw as being like a little pain in the business. So I knew that we were going to have to get intimate with this. But yeah, when Bool tool ended, I was just like, wow, there's nothing now. And so HardOps aimed to start out as like a sequel to it, but you know, as I worked with AR and we started getting more people on the team, like, you know, in the original marketing, I always said Hops was a tool to automate myself, but because of the team and the people that became a part of it, especially AR and Proxy and ST3, I as a person evolved, you know, my needs evolved, and the scopes evolved. You know, I used to kind of approach these tools from a sort of open the door, do some work, shut the door sort of thing. And, you know, the dedication of the team consistently showed me that, you know, instead of rotating a cast, there are definitely characters in the current cast that are worth seeing again and again, especially because they get the ideologies behind the tool. Like, I mean, it's not anything crazy to understand the ideologies, but you know, you can't just add things willy-nilly because it'll just be so big and overwhelmed that it'll just not make sense and no one will be able to understand it. And there has to be a definite need, like, to validate its existence. You know, it's hard to explain the kind of thought process that has gone through for like tool design and consideration, but there's a lot of things that are pretty full featured and complete that will never make it to the surface because they either just are just too much. You know, like there's this thing we did that I won't even say its name because then people say its name, but man, it was crazy. It was this thing that was going to make parts, but it just seemed like a big scope jump for Hops. It's like, oof, gotta either cancel that or think about what exactly we're getting ourselves into, because, you know, with every feature we make, we also receive a lot of email of, hey, this isn't working, this isn't working, hey, this isn't working. And not complaining about that, but I do look at that as our scope. You know, we have to determine what we want to support and how much we want to support of it, because it's it's easy to just add something, but taking it all the way to the finale of it working in pretty much all the cases that are going to come up for you as an artist, that's that last percentage that is such a long jump. And you probably wonder why we come out with so many updates for HardOps. It's because that level that we aim for, I don't think a lot of people are going for it, but I see this level, a level of quality, because you're probably used. Add-ons probably had a reputation in the past for being sometimey, for breaking, for being variable, and those are even notions that I wish to challenge in our work. Like, I feel that we can create a tool that can continue living. I mean, right now there's obviously some weird situations happening with the alpha with knife, but it's beyond our control. It's nothing we did. That's usually the first thing we check, is to make sure that nothing we did as a result of an update broke anything. And knife hasn't been touched, but the concept of a premium tool that was continuously able to evolve with you, the user, was like kind of the foundation of the concept. Just, you would evolve, you would understand the concepts, and so thus we would add an additional amount of lore to it to deepen it. Like, if you look at dice started out very basic. It started dicing to twist, which was great. We really got dice to twist together, behaving right with basically any mesh selection now. Mesh selection, don't be selecting metal balls, you weirdos. But in the end, view dice is what its final level was, and that's not even a final level. That's just the final level at this moment. The next level of dice is definitely to get view dice, or not view dice, get flow dice, because the thing about dice is it's so linear, and the experimentation of it is to eventually get dice to flow the way that we need it to, because I do see it as a possibility where we could draw a line and we flow along that, and we could just draw what we want our flow to be. Also, the concept of replacive dice, where we dice but replace, I really have my eye out for a solution for it. But once we're able to dice and replace the geometry with what we are dicing, it's a whole nother story for topological correction, to put it bluntly. I'm just looking at this wondering, where's the end gone? Where's the beef? The beef is here. Now we can go across. Where's the beef? The beef is right here. And we've resolved that beef, flowing all the way across. And we're just solving up and down. It's just a beat down. We're hitting this mesh with chairs at this point. Just beating it with Geo, just forcing it in there. But we are going to survive this subdivision conversion process. And for this shape, definitely not easy. If you want to have some fun with subdivision, get in there and convert one of these babies. So I'm going to turn off subdivision again, and let's turn back on our geometry. And this is where things start to really get a little heavy, because we have to solve what's going on. Like, if we look at this, it's all just being crushed, and I don't have a lot of solutions for it. Like, for example, I'm thinking that we can subdivide and add a loop like so, but obviously all these loops are going to flow way too far. They're going to expand into areas we don't want to talk about. So while we just added these, we got to unadd them. So anyways, where was I? We were just talking about nothing. We just want to make sure that they are all dead endings, so let's pull back. And we'll place our first edge loop, place our second edge loop to reinforce it. First edge loop. Really got to check and make sure that we're not doing anything weird, because believe me, it will get weird. Just like these convergencies will get weird. The first one will be fine, the second one will probably not be fine. In that case, it was fine. And I just don't feel like chasing this stuff around and getting rid of it. So that's why we're doing it the way that we are. But before we even move on, we just want to deal with this. You know, this model, deceptively painful. However, I imagine that with enough planning and foresight, we could procedurally model this, solve it in squares, array it together, dice it, and union it together, and make this thing very smartly. You know, there's like another level of challenge inside of Blender where instead of just making something or making it all quads, you can just make it very smart, where you use like the least amount of maneuvers, or you use all the things that built-in Blender gifts are giving you, like not so far as like build modifier, but you know, even wave can be used in creative situations even though no one ever talks about it. So let's tab back out and take a look at what we have and turn on subdivision. Subdivision is so cruel to us. We have a bajillion points on this Milkcrate. So a lot, you know, is it easier to do what we're doing to it, or is it easier to walk across these things? I'm being sarcastic, of course. And we could press E, E, F. And let's look at it again. And we'll just turn it off for edit mode, so that way we can see it whenever we come out of edit mode, but not whenever we are in edit mode. And we see that we are holding form pretty well. If we press Alt V and we look at our wireframe, we have laced this baby, let me tell you. So tap into edit mode, and let's now look at our other side of things and just see if we can go ahead and reinforce these areas. And because of how it looks in edit mode, I almost feel like I don't even need to solve it all the way to the finish line. However, that's lazy thinking. But in the context of surviving subdivision, you know, people are always like, why do you have a subdivision before, or why do you have a triangulate before your subdivision? And I'm like, just try subdividing an n-gon. The answer will be so clear. I mean, I'm not even being a jerk. I'm just saying, try subdividing an n-gon. Like, it's just one of the basic rules of subdivision. Just, if you learn anything, learn that. Walk away with that lesson. Subdivision will be cruel to n-gons, but it won't be anywhere near as cruel as it is to triangles. So let's right click and we'll just break that short. You know, we got a lot going on there, but solving these junctions will be nothing compared to what we're avoiding with all this redundancy. I was thinking about trying inset, but inset would have given me a result not what I would have wanted. So let's tab. We have to deal with two sides of this shape, and we have to do and the bottom. So we have our work cut out for us. You know, just an innocent little old Milkcrate. However, you know, looking at the clock, this is a crate from hell. You know, this crate is the just kidding. Just really laying on the lore for you guys, but let's continue on, because, you know, we are people who value our time. So we know what must be done. And that is just start solving. No talkie, just solve. For this, we are going to definitely give this a reevaluation. I mean, what are we looking at here? GZ, GZ, and this is what we have. So this is what I'm renegotiating it to. Like, you know, that's a lower APR than what we're looking at on our previous. Let's actually lower that APR again by sliding this over. And we're just creeping over the walls like some Mongols. So over the course of this video, we've talked about a lot of important topics. We've talked about eating people. We've talked about subdivision modeling. But we haven't talked about where this loop just got added. Where is that loop going? Okay, so there's some nasty business in the middle. Some of that unpermittable, nasty business. Let's look at it in top view, and this area is right here. So something like that. Let's see what we're looking at. I'm going to remove the subdivision because that thing's just choking us. And let's really look at this. So what do we need to do? And we see that there is some serious work needing to be done here. You know, however long we are in, however many hours this is on this MX Milkcrate challenge, you know, this is definitely way more painful. I'd rather fall off of these crates. However, everyone taking this challenge, you know, I wish them the best of luck, even if you're walking across them. So maybe something like that. We'll consolidate it to there. And just really looking at this mesh. You know, it can get so tricky. You just let Booleans give you something cap, and you just gotta get in there and deal with it. So here we are making corrections. GZ, bring it to here. J, GZ. So something like that will suffice. Let's grab this. And we're just making these congruent. Still gonna have to do a little cleanup on the end, but that's fine. You know, like we dealt with on the outside, we also have to deal with the inside. Or do we? You know, we could always cut it short, just ignore it, let triangulate have its way. But triangulate is no means to an end. It's just a way to survive that moment. You still need to get in and actually do a respectable amount of work to your mesh. However, I would be eager to see how Quad Remesher would have done with this. We probably would have had to give it a really high number, just pondering out loud. You know, just always curious on how the machine does on such things. And let's just make this connection. So while we're doing this, you know, the mouse that I use is like a mouse that's like discontinued. So I actually bought like 5 of the exact same mouse. It's like this force feedback Still Series mouse that they just weren't aware that they created like literally the holy grail of mice. Probably because no one bought it, which I understand. Every mouse is lit up now, but I'm telling you, the buttons on this thing, they just spoke to me. I just fall onto these keys. They're just so great. So we're just looking at our flows, just seeing what we're doing while we're talking about this mouse. It's called the Siberia 640, but I'm highly doubtful that you're going to be able to find it. But the haptic feedback on it is just, it makes modeling fun. Like sometimes I'll press one of the hotkeys on the mouse to center my view, and it'll like give me a nice little shake just to let me know, like, yeah, that's what you did. Not saying it's needed, it just is assistive for me. Sometimes I'm like, did I press that? You know, I'm never just quite sure. I have doubts sometimes, just like earlier. And that will solve that. Let us add a loop here. Grab these two, and it's like we're just going from trench to trench, fighting Germans. Just trench warfare. This is big old war. So that loop goes all the way around. This area needs a little bit more solving before it can have a loop that goes all the way around. I was about to force a loop, but we are doing it by the book, aren't we? We're making things work out on an official capacity. So we will just solve that there. And now we have a flow going all the way across. And going up this, we would need to begin solving all these double endings, which I can just say for the finale. And we're just looking at our mesh, just thinking about how we want to deal with our loop distribution. For example, I do want that to have a little bit of reinforcement. We're not barbarians. Let's grab all of these, press F, and let's look at it from the bottom, and we see that our corner that we built just did not survive the trip. So let's rebuild it. Let's grab this edge, GG. We're looking so good, so far so good. We'll press I, press B in order to protect our boundaries, because we're just literally offsetting this loop. That because we'll need a lot of points to converge into this area, but it'll depend on what our convergent solutions are that we're going to use with this area. I mean, we could add an additional loop underneath just so we can solve like something like this, is my first thought. And that's a quad redirect with a try just in the middle, not the end of the world. But we also see that before we can do that, we need to really reinforce this flow that's happening on the bottom. So I'm going to just draw that flow. Spacebar. Maybe something like that. However, that would mean that this area also needs its own loop, just so it can be properly reinforced. Let's save our file and press Ctrl+1 in order to subdivide this shape. Alright. We're looking pretty good, except for our bottom looking absolutely atrocious, but most of our areas are actually looking pretty good at this point. However, we should really fix up the front because we got our grates actually looking a lot better, but I feel like we are losing a little bit of our control in this area. And our flows also kind of indicate it. So let's just create our flow. And the whole time I've been working on this video, I've actually been listening to the exact same CD. I won't tell you the name because I don't want to be made fun of, but it's terrible. I'm always sampling new music. But yeah, after this section, I'm going to be coming back with some Palm 84 so I can really tap into my groove. So we're just writing flows. Something like that. And let's tab out of edit mode. And this is a really planar reinforcement is what I would describe this video as, is us making a shape that's really very planar, very reinforced for subdivision purposes. I mean, if we get in here and we turn off auto smooth, it's looking all right, but you know, once we raise our level to 2, some of these shading issues will go away, even though it's going to start performing a little meh. We could put a loop in here and really reinforce this side if we wanted, but that's going to result in 2 hits happening there. So either way, they're going to need to be terminated early, and just that transition of going back and forth is just going to be choky. but let's just deal with it. We just want to make sure there's no weirdness happening on the other side. I mean, not the most efficient usage of loops, but like I said, we're about to go in and deal with that. This is just kind of what we get just by default. And some of these areas, I'm just looking at it and thinking, should I reinforce that? There's a lot of loop reinforcement. You know, some of this we're going to have to just let sub D take it. And so that's about as far as I'm willing to go. Let us begin just consolidating some of this. Come on, Blender, pull it together. I guess I gotta wait for it. All right, right click, escape, W to exit Boxcutter. Not sure what's going on here. Oh, it's the subdivision. Yeah, so subdivision is just going to keep choking things up until it's released of its responsibility. It's just a cruel modifier at this moment. Way more cruel than bevel, but they're two of the most cruel modifiers inside of Blender. And what I mean by that is they're just cruel on your computer. If your computer is a potato, then you're going to need a better potato. Or you're going to need to be more efficient with those modifiers. You know, I get a lot of messages where people are like, hey, got your tool, turned out my computer was a potato. Okay. You should probably knew that coming in, didn't you, though? Having your browser crashing and, you know, all sorts of symptoms that your computer is possibly reaching old age. But you definitely got to know the limits of your computer and work inside of them, because with any computer I've ever used, especially with 3D, that's always been the case. Like, you gotta just know those limits. You gotta respect them, you know. Andrew Price taught that to me. You know, he did like that Architecture Academy like a long time ago. And, you know, when he started saying things like, set your render samples to, you know, 20,000, I was like, ooh, what does he have at his house? You know, hey, set your samples to 15,000 and render. And do what? Like, should I go do something now? Like, am I supposed to go be with my family? What am I supposed to do for 20,000 samples, you know? It was just a funny moment for me, but you definitely gotta know your computer's means and just work inside of them. You know, I'm not even trying to say it in a condescending way. It's just every computer has limits. If I was working on Blender on an iPad, I would I'd chalk up a lot of weirdness to the iPad. I would just be really happy to be using Blender on my iPad, in all honesty. Even if it was crashing every 2 seconds, I'd be like, oh, but I'm on an iPad though. Which means that, you know, it'll be fast and never get hot. Which is the difference between my Surface tablet and my iPad. Is the Surface tablet just, man, you just start enjoying that computer will start getting thermonuclear on you. It'll get nuts. It'll get so hot. Like, I used to walk around and try to sketch on it and just fight the heat until finally I realized, man, I'm fighting heat on a computer. What am I doing? What am I doing with my life? I'm a lunatic. I gotta get this computer back. Like, every time I show it to someone, they're like, wow, this computer's crazy. I'm like, yeah, let me show you this. I start showing them some of the basic features. And next thing you know, the computer's just super duper hot. Like, hey, is the computer supposed to be that hot? Yeah, just keep using it. Just ignore it. Sometimes it'll get itself hot in the computer bag and just start showing just heat icons. I'm like, oh man, what happened to this thing in the bag? I don't even know. I'm so glad there's a loop for that loop. I just kind of threw that just around the side. But we are just sewing this up on this very deceptive, cursed crate. You know, friends don't let friends do milk crates, alright? Not the challenge, not even the 3D milk crate modeling challenge, just kidding. But we're gonna also give this area a loop. in order to protect what we have as far as boundaries go. And let's grab this, connect it here, which just seems like a good route. Do we even need a loop there? Sometimes I just see empty loops and I just get worried about their loneliness. But I do know that every loop that I run into is going to need some sort of level of reinforcement. So we're just going with one loop of reinforcement today, which I see is actually a pretty good strategy, because otherwise we would have been dealing with like tri-loops reinforcing everything, which would have given us probably a better result, but it would have given us a kind of samey result, you know, just trying to change things up. And doing subdivision for almost 30 days now, every day, as you guys have been able to see in my videos. Even the days where you don't think I did a video, if you check the playlist, there is a video. It's just that day I didn't like what I did enough to publish a video on it. Like, I think the last tutorial I did that I didn't like was the winch. I just, I don't know, I felt I could have done better. I dishonored my forefather. Sorry, I've been playing a lot of Ghost of Tsushima. But, yeah, I gotta do better. And for our inset, you see today I'm taking a very simplistic approach to just getting through it. You know, as we solve it and we hand loops off to our next door neighbors, it'll become a lot more clear. But first thing we gotta do is form this connection GG, E, F. Maybe something like, well, let's try it again. GG, E. And that is actually even enough for us. Let's place an additional loop to reinforce the other side. And, you know, just so much loop talk, right? You know, loop talk with MX2. But, I mean, that's what it be. Sometimes you be talking to loops for hours, talking to yourself for hours. Normally, I would be on a video call with my friends, and we would just be shooting the shit, and this would just be a process that's just trivial, because, you know, you're just BSing about stuff. Time flies by so fast. So but definitely complaining about it doesn't help it speed up. If anything, that makes it slow down, and continuously renews the perspective of how effed it is. It's like, I gotta do this effed up, F and mesh, F this, F that, you know. No, just get in there. Let's subdivide. And with this loop, we'll bring it down. Press J. And with that, this area has been vanquished of demons. So now we're just working our way to the next level. And there's definitely some tricky stuff happening in here. But just thinking about how I want this, which I do want something like that. But also we want to just form that connection and get it over with. Let's just force a quad in there. Let's force another quad without any regard for our flow that we're trying to maintain. We have a flow, don't we? We have a ninja code. We got to follow that ninja code all the way to Hokage, unless they take Kurama away from us. But let's just press Control R, and then you know, you can still be Hokage even if they take Kurama away. So let's add a loop, make a connection. Of course, we're trying to make a very crazy connection. You know, that was like, that was a connection that a Tesla wouldn't have been able to make. So let's press J, double J. And I'm thinking something like that just for now to hold that together. If we tab out and we add a level of subdivision back on this mesh again, after just diving in and working it for an hour, you can see that we're making real leeway with this interior area as well, and that while it looks like there's a ton of work remaining for us, it's not nearly as much as you would think. We just gotta, first of all, remember where we left off, which was about right here, and begin dealing with our next sections. However, we see that there's some recursive sections that need dealing with. So I'm going to select this point, press J. We now have that tail filled in, and we want to form that connection there. Grab this one and form this connection. And you know, like I said, this is pretty brainless work. The hard part is this, or not even, you know, who knows what's the hard part. You know, for me, I think the hard part was thinking about all the ways that we were going to put the shape together. But I mean, you know, when I look at a shape, it just explodes into shapes for me. I just see all the tools that we've made that are for dealing with said shape. So definitely probably a different way than most people approach things. But yeah, every shape I look at, I'm just thinking about, you know, what we've done involving that aspect of the workflow, because the goal of HardOps is definitely to make every aspect of general hard surface design easier. However, this is definitely more of a sub D problem than it is a design problem, because if you're dealing with design, you're probably not going to be getting in here dealing with all these loops being nailed down. That's more of a finisher job. So let us just form a connection, and we have this edge over here. But that ain't our edge. That one's our edge. So let us right click, subdivide, grab this loop, bring it here. And something like that would be a little more acceptable. So continuing on, you know, every square haunted us twice. And so, you know, how are we going to deal with this bottom grill? That one is still daunting us. We haven't touched it. We haven't looked at it. We haven't thought about it. I'm hoping that we didn't say any loops or, you know, break that area up at all. All right, send a quick reply. People be messaging me while I'm recorded. They're like, hey, what's up? Like, doing this process that it's kind of terrible. If I pause the video to do something else, there's a chance I might not return to the process that we're discussing. I mean, there's a chance I might not return to this video because I could just run away, and I'm just kidding. I'm not going to run away. But look at that flow. We sent the biggest flow. I don't even remember where we were. That's how big of a flow we sent. Okay, we're in the right area. And if we look at this side, we could always get in and correct this geometry by basically remitigating our triangle a little bit more to, you know, a different area. But either way, we're making leeway on this, massive leeway. Even though this video is like super long, I need to really watch out for what models I walk up to, because a model might walk up to you looking easy and you find yourself fighting with the Milkcrate, realizing you had no plan. Just kidding. But what are we going to do about these? Just kidding. I'll stop asking you guys, you invisible viewers. We're going to have to do a no-no. I know, terrible. Why did he do that? I hate that guy. Always breaking circles. But I ain't about to let this flow end the way that it was. So we're just tabbing back in and just looking at this. sometimes I will listen to a CD like 100 times just to really place how I feel about it. You know, it's like, I don't know if I hate this CD or if I love it. Let's enable view, because that's what I'm truly trying to do. GX. Maybe something like that. And now we have these loops being reinforced, which will play a role later. But just something like that. I mean, if we tab out of Subdivision and just look at this area, it'll look more like a circle than what we were looking at before. However, if we look at this crate up close, we see that there's like, ooh, there's some oofs in there. Like, I mean, let's attempt it. I mean, it's a little late for us to even attempt such a thing. But let's say we wanted to select all of these loops and be like some, what's the right word? Let's say we want to be some real crate Nazis. You know, just get in there and really be very specific. Ooh, what's going on with this mesh? And what's going on over in this area? We got some really... Ooh, we got some solving to do, guys. Look at this. We merged this in, and we gave no care to how well it merged. You know, if it merged, if this neighborhood is ready for such a merge to happen. You know, we didn't even check with the people, and as a result, we see that the people are very distraught. I mean, once we start dissolving edges, we are definitely now merged with the surface. So we won't just dissolve everything that was existing there. That would be cruel. But we definitely are going to have our work cut out for us for dealing with this bottom area. And you know, you're like, what work? What's cut out for? Look at this. You know, we call this, in 3D fill, we call this bullshit. This is some of that bullshit. Like, Jesus. This mesh, hold it together, mate. This mesh, really not holding its integrity. But that's fine. We'll teach it. We'll teach it some integrity. And that mesh is now fine. This area. Whew. Ooh, we tried, didn't we? We were so cruel to this area. Like, wow. Let's just get that out of here. GG. So maybe something like that. And now let's double check our edges. Ooh, these are just looking hideous. What are we doing down here? All right. So we can't even get in and be crate Nazis like I was hoping, because we have other problems that we have to deal with our mesh. We should focus on our linear goals, which is surviving subdivision. So the main goal of beveling all these was to have something survive subdivision, and we see that it survived subdivision, but it could have survived it better. So I'm going to grab all of this all the way to this edge, and let's press Control B, roll the wheel once, press P, set our profile to 1, so that way we can just adjust the boundaries of this. And we're just kind of pushing that in, so that way we actually have this area too that we can push a boundary on. So we're basically forcing a flow to begin happening, and then we're offsetting the damage that's happening with this and its edge, because with this side we can't do any of that fancy stuff we were just talking about. We gotta just solve it using Blender magic. No, just kidding, but I love the knife. Two, three, four. One, two, three, four, five. Merge at last. I don't know what happened here, but we're just going to pretend like it was intentional. And this was at the very end that we ended up with a situation. So let's just merge at last. And let's look at what we have going on in here. How off are we? That off? Well, I'm just going to move that. And let's get out of view. I forgot that I'm in view. That's going to make things very weird. We don't want that. And we're just looking at subdivision mode, which is always going to come with a nice little hang now. Alright, and let's connect these points, bring these to a conclusion, and that is it. Let's bring these two to a conclusion. And so with this area, we are going to need to add a loop in for reinforcement. And this one's also going to be a little bit of a conundrum. I mean, we could add a loop going all the way across, but that gives more reinforcement to a singular box than I would like. I'm not trying to give boxes all the reinforcement they need to be successful, just enough. So let us bevel this to space it out. We'll dissolve that edge. And just a little slidey verty mergy. And if we look at our flow, it's not terrible. We're just refining some of our solutions, modernizing them for the mesh that we have at hand. Fighting the urge to just add a loop. We'll just slide all the way to this side, do the same thing with this one. And just really thinking about how I want these to go. I almost want one more loop just going all the way across the top like so, just to really begin quarantining. Usually when geometry gets questionable, I will just begin quarantining it into an area where it doesn't interact with any of the critical areas like so. So, you want your perimeter boundary, but you also want your perimeter boundary to have kind of clean flows colliding with it, which will also help. But, we're just talking about flatty philosophy today. So let us just slide in. All right, solution found. A solution worth propagating. One that I find to be relatively stress-free, but also not bad looking. So something like that would definitely be more optimal. See? And we could just extend these out into full loops. Dissolve these two as well. And I think just doing that will give us the flexibility to quad them both. but also enough loops. We don't want too many loops. We could definitely overwhelm things with loops, but there's no need for that barbarianism. Let's tab out and take a look at our mesh, a common thing that we're used to doing now. So slow with this transition, but we see that now our box areas are just looking just that little bit better. And now we can take a look at this, which is also getting turned into an arc. And one curiosity to me is it looks like the mesh isn't connected. Let's take a look at it from this side. That part looks fine. This part concerns me. Over here, ooh, look, there's some weird stuff happening. Let's look at it again. Still waiting on sub D. I'm telling you, there's something happening with this mesh, but it's just not revealing itself to me yet. So let's press H and hide. All right. Maybe it's over here. I'm going to bring this loop around and connect it here, so that way we can really analyze what's open and what's not open. And so far so good. However, there are some ponderances around this area of the mesh. And let's give that a moment. All right, mesh is going to make me solve it. Just kidding, but that's the only solution for what we're looking at. Like the only way to get to the bottom of what we're truly looking at with this mesh is to solve it. So we probably have enough room to give every box a loop in the middle, but really I believe that's unnecessary. So let's just diamond quad this in the middle of the road. Maybe not diamond quad it. Maybe send the other one actually across the street. And with the way that all these loops flow and easily connect, you would think that this mesh is perfectly fine. And maybe it is. That's not fine. Let us right click. Let us right click and subdivide. We'll place a loop here, here, and here. So 3 loops max. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wrong. J. J. Reface. J. And this is where we can begin to rethink some decisions. In fact, there, no more decisions to have to think about. Got to make those decisions fast. So, I mean, a lot of people like pointing out some of my topological mistakes that occur. You know, keep it up. Definitely sometimes hard to catch them all when I'm moving at these speeds, but you know, if it shows up in the sub D, I'm more than likely going to get in there and do something about it. But otherwise, sometimes I'll just let it live. You know, what is perfection? You know, that's the question I've been asking this whole time. All right, let's tab back out and take a look at what our mesh is looking like. I just want this area to have a proper connection before we begin committing to finalizing. And something like that is definitely suitable. However, I saw something happening with the surface that didn't look consistent. All right, so this area, we could always tighten these loops. We could actually give this area a loop of reinforcement, which it did not ever get before. And because of that loop, we now are creeping where at? Oh, we made it all the way. So this loop is actually serving as a reinforcement for this one as well. So we tab out. Maybe just a few loops just to tighten that up, just for shading purposes. All right, so this piece is actually looking pretty good. I mean, there's still some areas to refine, of course. There's always areas to refine in the subdivision conversion process, but it's definitely getting better and better. And as demonstrated before, we could definitely crease it and just call it a day and not have to deal with any of this loop reinforcement business, which people will love just pointing that out because it's just so obvious. Like, we could always crease it and call it a day on subdivision loop reinforcement. But for those cases where you aren't able to use subdivision creases, this is the name of the game. And in fact, for our game, we're going to need to get all silly with our area here. And we just select them both, press J. And if we look at this with subdivision, it should just at least be looking a little better now. This one will also need some vertical bracings. So let's remove this flow that we forced in there. We don't need it. What we do need is to stop these from going awry. So something like that. And then we can even turn this into 2. You know, with the Milkcrate, the crease is so specifically hard that there's no room for us to have loose, not tight subdivision not being tight on this if we're converting this to truly to a subdivision mesh. And we're getting down to the bottom solve area of things too, so we don't have to go too hard on things, just hard enough. In fact, for this area, I'm just going to right click, subdivide, add a loop, and let's bring that loop up to here, which will merge them nicely. And then we can actually begin making just a few of these obvious connections that are just right next to each other, so we can begin having a proper flow. And I'm really thinking about the loop reinforcement for this area, like how hard at the internal of this are we going to be looking? Probably too hard. So let us just climb upstairs and sneak in and add a loop. So something like this. You know, everywhere I'm going to go, there's going to be some solving work to be done. You know, you're solving, it's an eternal process. Loop and loop, and we're given this area reinforcement when the area above will also be needing reinforcement, and also the loop counter to this loop will be needing reinforcement. In fact, if we look at this, all right, so this loop has no reinforcement, so we could just press K and just run up the page. Into something like that. So, I mean, really far for us to be taking these loops, but that's how prolific some of these loops are pretty much becoming. And now that, you know, we've been working at this for several hours, it's probably apparent that this is going to have to become a time lapse. So sorry for those who hates music, you know, Dark Side. Dark Side hated music. He, I think he exploded when Superman whistled one time. Real weird. We don't talk about that. But we see how important these reinforcements are, especially for getting rid of some of these sparse shading issues that happens when the geometry is just so simplistic and Subdivision just has its way with it. Like I said, this shape is not built for Subdivision, which is why I'm building it for Subdivision. We'll start there. Let's see. And by starting there, let's see, where do we, okay. We did choose a good starting place. And just imagine, we were just doing this on the other side of this crate. We probably could have done it on one side and solidified it and done all sorts of things. As far as the smart planning category goes, I'm still thinking of how this could be optimized in a faster method with this as the end goal. Of course, we could have stopped at the Boolean level. You know, I can't stress that enough. All right, and let's take a look at what we have now. And I am still very pleased with how this model is coming out. I mean, topologically, this thing will require some overkill, but there is no joy without, you know, a little bit of pain. So I'm going to Alt W, and let's use Control tilde, and I'm going to just remove the subdivision modifier for now. Actually, let's undo that. We are going to completely disable it for now, and just try working with Knifebox. Which the good thing about Knifebox is if you're off, you can always just press G and move it, or hold Control and move it. So let us get out of Linebox because we're already looking in the exact view that we want. These areas are the most crucial to have these loops on. And some of these decisions aren't smart. Like that one, okay, maybe a little smart. I was worried it was going to be cutting through the pieces that we've been managing this whole time. But just like this, we're able to get in and actually prepare our reinforcements for this particular area. So theoretically, we could just go back to looking at this with Subdivision enabled, and it should be looking a lot closer to what the final result should be. Loop here, and loop here. Let's see, anywhere else we miss. Let's tab out and see what we're getting. Subdivision is the most cruel of our masters. And we see that we did miss an area. And because Subdivision is still enabled, it also is going to have a brief hold in edit mode. Strange. Why does it have to have this hold in edit mode? I'll never know, but gotta do something about it. So let's tab out, take a look at what we have, and we're looking pretty good so far. I mean, if we Alt V, we have a subdivision mesh. However, it's not a perfect subdivision mesh. We can get in and solve it to be an even more adequate version of itself, but before that, we gotta do some final corrections to it and just really get this last piece to be topologically sound, as we've done with the rest of this, and then maybe even solve some of these ending connections that are left over. Alright, so we get in, we take a look at what our topology is looking like. A lot of unsolved areas. Then at the bottom, we still got to solve that too. We got to solve it there and there. So it's like a multi-dimensional solve. We have no walls to hide us. So truly painful. Let us tab in edit mode and get this party started. Loop, loop. However, you want to be careful about those secondary loops, because once you add your first loop, it's going to break a loop, and then the second loop is going to also the first one will solve the try into a quad, and then the next one will redirect. So we are going to just get in and just slide this stuff around. Oh geez, accidentally box cut. You can't tell because my top bar isn't showing, but I totally did. We'll just give that a moment. Let's be GG. Let's Alt W to bring back our top bar. And there I go, accidentally starting that maneuver again. So it's really a classic maneuver, just click and drag. It's so hard to not do that whenever you're inside the Boxcutter active tool. So if you are not using Boxcutter, definitely press W to exit. Boxcutter is able to be open in both object mode and edit mode. So if you have it open in both modes, then it will be there whenever you go between object and edit. But that's the best advice I can give you for it, at least at this time. But as always, we are seeking ways to improve things. But those things also take time to consider and make sure they're not disruptive or detrimental to previous solutions. Worst thing is to break something that was previously a feature from a release log. That really ruins my day when that happens. I get mad whenever we add a feature and then we lose a feature. It's like, what the heck? What happened? Alright, so we have that loop. Let's subdivide so we can terminate these loops short in these junction areas where we have an opportunity to go back and solve them. For this area, we are definitely going to solve that loop short. So maybe a loop here, and a loop here, a loop here, and also here. From here, something like that, except I do want to go in and basically grab all of this and consolidate it out of my cylinder's face, because my cylinder doesn't need this in his face right now, helping him grow into a big strong cylinder, and that's definitely not going to help. However, we probably want something like that so it does actually solve nicely into the cylinder, and from here we're getting somewhere. It probably just seems like I'm just mindlessly cutting geo, but as we jump around, we are just filling in all the blanks, and in the end there will be no blanks left. It'll just be us and our result without anything standing in the way. So I'm going to grab that point and connect it to this point, and that did not work out. So we will just jump there linearly. And there's so many curiosities with this particular shape that will have to be solved by its end. And that in itself is like its own separate video, or could be, of just getting in and perfecting all of these areas, because you know, we're just solving them to the level of surviving subdivision, but there's even further that we can go with solving these things, with getting them to be, you know, some really good geometry. But you know, there I am beginning to go back and reinforce areas that we previously designated only one loop of additional coverage. So once we come out of edit mode, we can just look at what we have going on. So far so good. This area also needs reinforcement. I mean, it's not worthy of it, I know, but we'll come back and deal with that. But previously I was just looking at it and it's just so sparse for being just a very long quad face set that we could definitely get in and refine its solution. So we're going to grab all of this and maybe deselect this loop along the side. Just make sure we don't have any side geometry, because we don't want to flatten that. It'll be detrimental. And some of the stuff will merge so smoothly we wouldn't even know that we were just destroying things. Alright, I'm going to press SZ0. And let's take a look at this now. Of course, the same jumble of waiting for sub D. You know, shouldn't be so dependent on it, but just having some fun with it. So we also see that on our square quest, these areas were not solved enough for us to win the raffle prize of just a nicely shaded area. So let's go ahead and do that. We could also be doing some like cloning and replicating our work in other areas, or using grid fill. You know, grid fill is great for these type of areas, but man, we're just getting in there and just jaying our way to success. And really, I do need to set that to be one of my mouse keys, because I have so many keys on this mouse and I just haven't mapped it yet. I keep thinking I'm about to go back to hops flows, where we bypass all of this. So we tab back out and take a look at what we have. So I'll open up the software to adjust my mouse, and they're talking about GG and the engine changing. Oh geez, now they want my account information. You ever gave login information to adjust the settings of your mouse? So let's jump over to engine, and I'm using a mouse called the Rival 500, and these are the mouse buttons that are currently that I'm currently using. So we'll just go under config and we'll create a new one, and we'll just call this actually, let's right click and choose duplicate, because we want to keep it. We'll call it B3D_2, and there's only one button that I need to change, and that is, I do like that one. We could change F9. We could change Alt W too, but let's change Alt M. And let's just change that to J. And you know, these sort of things actually take a long time for me to calibrate too, of just selecting 2 points and just bam, just pressing a mouse button, and it'll just make my life a little bit easier for this. All right, email time. Email has been read. Back to work. For a second, it was just bouncing around there a little bit, but we're just knifing our way to success. with a model that you have definitely more than likely tuned out for by now. If you're still watching this video, get out of here. Just kidding. But seriously, this is like the Iliad of crate videos. We got 3 down there. And up here, you know, I want to have a loop that we can offset this bad flow to. I know, such a strange way to think, but if you look at it from top view, it's not so bad. I keep thinking that this top area is going to get in our way. It's not. So now we can get rid of that, and we have a good flow happening along the bottom, and then we have a good flow happening along that flow at the bottom. I know, kind of extra. I didn't mean to spin it there. This is how my mesh got upside down. So, continuing on. Maybe something like that. And with this area, let's really think about what we want. That. Really hard slide. I had to slide it like extra hard. That's alright. I'll slide it as hard as I gotta slide it to slide it when I gotta slide it. Let's just simplify this geometry by sliding it out of here. And if we look at it without subdivision, or we look at it with subdivision enabled, which is what happens whenever I come out of edit mode, we see that it's getting there. But we're actually working on this side. You know, you get so multi whenever you're doing these sort of cleanups because it's you're just everywhere. You're here, you're there, you're grabbing points and bringing them downstairs. Maybe something like that. And we could bring this point down here and just think about how we want this to go. So we could add a loop in the middle, have both of these converge into it, which is a quad, but it's a redirect. And then we can just consolidate this at one point. So no puzzle, just consolidation. I mean, triangles are not anywhere near as bad as n-gons. You know, hopefully I can at least convince you of that. Just, you know, n-gon's so bad, yes, n-gon's so bad, but also not as bad as triangles. You know, we're like comparing diseases here, but it's just important to note because I'm way more lenient with triangles whenever it comes to subdivision versus how I treat basically n-gons, which n-gons should be solved into something unless you see an n-gon solving into something adequate, in which case you could probably get away with it. But most of the time I find myself solving n-gons at least just as a formality, but triangles, not so much. They really got to be hurting the model in a way to get my attention. So we're just still moving along, forming these connections, but we want the connection to be this, which can also be replicated on the other side. You know, we send a lot of loop up, but we're not even sure if we have enough loops to make all of these connections. And I mean, really, it's up to you just how important each and every connection is to you. You know, some people want to make every connection a reality and make it perfectly capable, and that's fine too. You know, you probably end up with a great looking model. I'll settle for an okay one, and also have lunch in a timely fashion. Still haven't had lunch yet. Just kidding. That'll be my joke of the day. Is missing lunch. Even though I could have lunch, I could be eating a bagel right now. Let's grab these and slide. We'll join that, and let's also add a point in the middle that we'll join both of our points at. Something like so. And we're just about there. All we gotta do is just keep going from side to side only about 50 times. It's like Red Rover of Doom. Or, you know, Red Rover Pocket Full of Posies. Except it's all ashes and we're always down. So let us get in, make our connections, daily connections. Also, I keep forgetting about having J actually on my mouse now. And I think the only reason I didn't do it before is because J doesn't do anything else like in object mode. But I could see this. You know, I almost made it my filter visible key, the one that I have for. We're gonna need some massive loops. I mean, if we want to do it proper, we'd need some massive loops. Now you might be watching this wondering, you know, are you going to revisit this topic again? Hell no. Oh man, F this crate, man. This is a crate from hell. You know, it looked like an easy crate in the pictures, I'm telling you. It's like, it had its leg out by the road. It was doing like a Bugs Bunny. It just lured me. This crate is as dangerous to a modeler as it is to the people that are trying to do it for a challenge. You know, how do you even get that many egg cartons? I mean, milk cartons. But let's see, that one goes there. So we'll just try it on a flat area. You know, you'll hate my modeling style because when it comes to a flat area, I will just do whatever. Unless you're saying, hey, I'm going to deform this thing. I will do what I will to a flat area. I have to. You know, it's like there's no safe areas in modeling to hide. So that's like the closest thing conceptually to a safe zone. Let's just consolidate this. We don't need all these double loops. And let us finally bring this area to something meaningful. So we don't want an extra loop there, definitely though. And we also don't want an extra loop. This loop joins into another loop that mirrors. So we got to think about this mesh's future while we're making such decisions. First thought, always, for me, simplification. If you simplify it, it just becomes a lot more readable. Which is why it's my first step whenever I'm dealing with this process. My first thought is, how can I simplify this? You know, I might add something, and then I might simplify it. You know, because I'm not a smart guy. I'm real basic. So everything I do is like a matter of breaking something down. Just breaking it. If you can break it down, then you can analyze it. At least that's how I see things. It doesn't work for everything, but you know, I try to understand most things that I get involved in. At least in full, you know, what it entails. So that loop was a little extra, but if we tab out and we look at our mesh, let's see what we're getting. And now we're looking at a mesh that is coming together. Well, coming together. Coming together. So let's just run up this wall like a ninja and make our connection. Good thing is that because we're using pretty much similar patterns as we're working, it's just getting repeated. And we can just keep playing off of coincidences that are being created by us as we're working because we know the rules we're following. However, this area at the end is like undefined. This area is undefined and we have to define it for 8 floors. And what happened here? What is happening here? Let's go upstairs. How's the mesh in the penthouse? Oh, terrible. Mesh is terrible in the penthouse. How's the mesh in the, well, I guess also the penthouse. You know. Who is this mesh? I mean, who's that geometry? Bringing all these meshes just home. Yeah, I just don't know how all this happened. It looks like I Alt-D'd by accident on a lazy keystroke or something. But also we have the same problem where basically all of these edges that comprise this got compromised. So we definitely gotta get in there from top view and just get things back under control. Maybe something like that, and then let's look at it with subdivision. I'm kind of embarrassed that I let that happen to the mesh, but now we're at least getting a little closer. Even though we are looking at like just, where did all this slant come from? And that slant actually happened all throughout this shape. Like the whole thing just received an amount of slant, and I just don't know why. You know, there's probably a maneuver that happened previously that could explain this, but we will just go in and correct it. For that is life. Life is us slanting our own geometry. BGZ. And I'm not even going to ask. Well, I do have to ask, what the heck happened here? Something like this. We want to select and just SZ0 to get it back flat, because I don't know what I was looking at, but it was unacceptable. Alright, just grabbing everything I'm seeing and slanting it back for reasons I don't know. I guess it's a subdivision freebie. GC, and we want to turn off Verti Mergy, so that way we can actually grab this one and slide it up. Some of the stuff that we're in the process of moving, it's like slightly unnecessary. I mean, we could probably grab everything and just move it up to the nearest point, and that would actually handle it. For example, once we get it there, this area is back being congruent. So for this, you know, we could snap that, but really we need to select everything that's in here, bring it there, and also finally do the same with the top. So really got to watch ourselves with our mesh so we don't end up creating situations like that. But I'm not sure what happened there. But anyways, let us continue. So definitely looking better on some levels. However, you know, we probably want to give this its own loop, this its own loop, same thing, just reinforcing, but definitely not that. So let's right click, but if we do this, we set a precedent where we're probably going to begin reinforcing additional loops. So just keep these things. We want it to actually connect here, connection, connection. God, I'm gonna be a zombie by the end of this process. Let's subdivide it, slide here, connect here, and we are just running around the shape, just fixing different areas until we're done. You know, when are we done? When there's a knock on the door and my pizza's arrived. But right now I feel that the mesh is actually in a pretty good place, and we are beginning to get into the realm of over obsession whenever it comes to this mesh. So with this area, what we want to do is actually add loops to this area and then see if they circumnavigate all the way around to the back, and they do, but they end here. So it's not so bad, except for this one. This one is entirely obsessive. So something like that, we could just try it out. Alright, let us dive back in to Doomcrate or Crate from Hell or whatever. You know, this thing, like I said, is so deceptive. It looks like it would be just your easy run-of-the-mill model, but boy oh boy, you try to get this thing working with Sub-D, you're in for the fight of your life, boy or girl. However, any woman would run from this. Let us take this all the way to the bottom, where we have a connection just waiting for it. And there's no better feeling than that. We also need a connection all the way around, like so, that we can just grab all the way to there. But from this side, who knows where we were making that connection. Just kidding, we were making it here, and we are actually, let's look at this. Guess it's redundant. Sometimes loops are redundant. Just get them out of here. Get this guy out of here. So we're just looking at our shape. We've basically crisscrossed everything. So hard. Could have used Babel for that, but we didn't. So let's just bring some loops up and down. New loop up, or loop up and new loop down, however you want to do it. I'm doing loop up, loop down, just GG up and new loop down, like a song. Just GG, new loop down. GG up, new loop down. And you can tell that my brain has turned into mush. Let's watch out whenever your brain turns to mush. You know, it'll happen after 4 hours of quadulating a crate. And all you'll be thinking about is how you were done in the first 30 minutes, but because of a special challenge factor, you had to take it to the max. So let's tab out and take a look at what we have created so far. And so while we could get in and solve absolutely every single ending, and you better believe that we definitely can. In fact, this loop wasn't reinforced, neither was this loop. This one is now reinforced. And we could even, you know, do some action like that to just terminate that one short. Same with this one. Let's just press K, C, Z to cut all the way through. And we're just solving some of these areas that we kind of left unexplained. You know, maybe something like that. However, I do see that this area was also going for an opportunity. So let's make it happen. Dissolve that one. Let's jump to the next one. This one's a bit of a mess. And if we wanted to begin, you know, just kind of ending some of this, that's also fine. Which all these triangles are terminators for loops. you know, and they won't be back. Just kidding, they might be back. You know, any loop hits a triangle, it will be back. It will be back alive. And we have our loop, we have our loop. And we look at the next one, we have our loop, we have our loop, we have our loop. We look at our area, we have our loop, we have our loop. And look at it from top view, let's look at it from bottom view. And this one is the one that's going to need all the reinforcement we can give it. So same tricks as before. I know what you're thinking. Didn't we do this before? Yep. To the other side. So one loop, and what does one loop do when you bring in another loop? It does that. So we have to help it by cutting it short and just ensuring that we are making very nice solutions for it on the manual front. So something like this, knowing that Subd will handle a great deal. Let's right click, subdivide. We slide this point up. So many loops, loop mania. You know, that could be this video, just welcome to loop mania. But yeah, probably gonna have to time lapse this one, broski, is just too long. That's usually my metric now. I don't need people talking about me making videos that are too long. However, there's a channel dedicated just to making short videos out of the longer videos. So whatever, you'll have something to watch when I'm dead. Let's press J, and we'll add a loop here, add a loop here, J to form that connection, slide it over, connection, and such a ponder with how to deal with this one. You know, we could do something like that, where these two make a connection, these two make a connection, but then we have to start doing some stuff like that, which we can always just simplify to that as our base solution, which is probably my favorite at this time, at least, just for the nature of what we're dealing with. I mean, I'm not even looking where these loops are going, but they're going to a better place, I suppose. And that time we were able to let them work for us. So with this, we want to definitely clean this up, because you know, you don't want people saying that about your geometry, but I'll tell you that if your geometry is ew, I'll be like, ew, you know, that geometry is terrible. What's up with that? Who did that to you? Who did that to your mesh? We need to track them down, unless it's a Boolean, in which case it comes with the territory. Maybe something like that. And this area, certified mess. What's the first solution? Clean up. What's the next solution after that? Negotiation. I mean, not in these specific orders, but just saying, those are like my first two thoughts that come to my mind when I look at a area that's a quote-unquote mess. I'm like, you know, wonder if we can negotiate with it. Sometimes they send us all out running with our bags packed, and then we know that we have opened a hellgate situation, and negotiation isn't an option, and our only option is extermination, or subjugation. Extermination, yeah, just destroy all the geometry. But let's just tab out of edit mode, which will let Subdivision take a moment to put itself together. And now we see that we are definitely looking at, well, first of all, this whole area is not looking right. Watch, if I select this face and press Shift G normal, we see that That's all that got selected. So we're going to need to hide some loops, because I don't know where this lack of flatness is coming from. I'm probably messing up today somewhere and I'm just not aware. But you know, I usually always have surface control. Always. I mean, not like a braggart way, but you know, Blender is pretty well equipped for managing your surfaces and keeping things as planar as you need it to be. But in this case, we are seeing my crate looking like it's been left in some sunlight. I mean, it's really hot where I live at. So let's select this, SZ0, Alt H to unhide all those hidden. And now let's look at it. And it's definitely looking a lot less silly. So with that, we can now say that we have converted this mesh over to Subdivision, even though we could definitely get in and do things even more perfect. And we could continue talking about this all day, just you and me all day, just us and this freaking Milkcrate. The joke long expired. But if we look at this, we see that now it is holding the form and looking a lot better than what we were looking at before with just raw subdivision and no solving. So we can get in and look at the base of things, and it's not looking terrible. I mean, unless we were recording a short from the inside of a crate, like a movie about rats or something, it really doesn't matter. But now we've at least built this crate in a way where they could be stacked up. However, this area is just, we can't let it live, can we? That's my problem. I care too much. So, is this the area that's causing us these problems? Let's hide everything. I'm trying to undo, and undo is undoing me. You know, undo is like, yeah, right. What you trying to tell me to do? Okay, I'm sorry I tried to negotiate with undo. Undo is like, listen, I'm about to hurt you real bad. Let's select a face and press Shift-G normal, and we see that that's what our normals are flattened by. Shift-G normal, that's what our normals are flattened by. So we still have some fairly unequal areas. So same thing as before, we're just gonna hide our loops like so. I mean, I must have pressed G on a hang or something and just so I want to select all of this, because there is no unevenness to this. Let's look at what else we have over here. Everything else we are selecting is fairly straightforward. Just all of that. Ooh. You get a little overzealous with the grab. Sometimes you're just so ready to be done, you will just grab everyone who looks guilty. Look at all this guilty mesh. And we're going to press SZ0 and get out of our pivot point of the 3D cursor, SZ0, and that's what we're looking at. So SZ0, there's a vert in here, just trying to grab it too. And let's tab out of edit mode and just take a look at things. So now we don't have that going on, and our crates are able to sit on top of each other for someone to, of course, just begin tumbling off of them. So this video originally started as a way to just play with the idea of a milk crate because of the popularity of the recent milk crate challenge. However, the challenge is actually at modeling these things, because if you try to put one of these things together, you're going to open a supreme can of howdy doody, especially whenever it comes to the solving process, where basically you're going to be getting in here and solving eternally, basically. I mean, we see that I was able to survive and make it out the other end, and at least hit the minimal criteria of surviving subdivision. But the more and more I peruse this thing, the more I'll find geometric split ends that will just need to just be clipped or just resolved. But with that, I can at least wrap this video for now, and I thank everyone for watching. We'll also turn off viewport overlays so that way we can just get in here and admire our finished result. We're done. You know, you're only done when you say you're done. You know, which is also something you should learn with clients, is specifying when you're done. Otherwise, they will not let you ever be done. But you know, this is an accomplishment. Like, we were able to get to the end of this goal with this very painful object, and now I can wrap this video. And thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Let's also press Alt V, turn on wireframe. Let's turn on overlays. Let us turn off the floor, the cursor, parent lines, origins, and then turn on wireframe. And now we can peruse it, and that way we can see that the geometry matters where it does. But you know, we had a pretty fun process getting in here making this, even though, you know, this is double-sided business. Like, this object is definitely not something you just do on a lunch break, unless your lunch break is 3 hours because you're eating sushi off of a naked body. But otherwise, this is something that's going to take you a good moment. But I'm just glad we survived it, and I'm just rolling this crate around because, you know, sometimes whenever you're done, that's all you can do is just grab the space mouse and just twist it around and really just admire the fact that you survived this operation. So with that, I will at least wrap this video for now, and I'll see you guys next time.